was cool.
Yep. That was so much fun yesterday. So you really, you ran that so good. Yep.
And even Ed Greenwood put a nice message into the Discord, so that was nice.
Yeah, I saw it on my phone a little bit. My phone is old and crappy, so I'm going to respond to that.
Awesome.
The show here. Yep.
Yeah, cool.
So yeah, now I have a mini doggy that is hungry and she doesn't see me for like 5 hours or 6 hours, so she's very keen on being fed treats by mommy here. So yeah. But the good thing is she's tired because she's been standing in the hallway waiting for me the whole time. So. Bought treats today, so we have lots of treats. So there you go.
We'll be
exactly,
good.
Burnout from yesterday. No.
Kayla's actually on. I think she's going to be raiding in shortly, so we'll be fine.
Yep. I love that short image, but that is kind of an homage to.
Yeah, and they got a bunch of them too. They got some other books too that are like homages to the original Player's Handbooks.
Yep.
What's up, Tim? Oh, thank you, Coma. Great, glad you enjoyed that. What's up, Ever Mysterious, Tim?
Yep.
So, Tim, if you're bored and you want to hang on here at some point, please feel free. If you want to, if you can't, no biggie. Jason's probably not going to be able to make it, but I have less Oblivion Seeker at their spot. Hey, what's up, Alex? Oh, shit. You can't hear me? Oh, my God, it's real high. Sorry. Something. There. How's that? Tim, if you want to hop on and discuss, take part in this discussion, you are welcome to. Because I don't think Jason's going to make it. He's having computer issues. So that's what I was saying. Not a big deal. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Recovered from last night. Thank you for the kind words, Coma. I had a blast. What was the name of that song? Oh my gosh, I'd have to hop back and I can oh man. Because I'm on a different screen in XSplit now and I can't tell you what it is.
You have to put links to their stuff or their website or something. So.
Who died? No one died, but I had like 4 characters in the teens. I had Tony's character that's only down to 1. I had the half ogre down to like 4.
And I was down to 6.
You were down to 6. I was blasting them. And the funniest thing was I got to use an egg ring spell against them. So it was funny. Like the Natural Scorcher is such a great spell. Hopefully everyone's doing well. I'm slipping. It's not about killing. It's about challenge. And yeah.
You have to have like near TPKs is kind of, that's where then you know you dialed it in, right? So to speak.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm about. I want the story. I want a good story with some good role play. Not, I think you guys all know my style. It's not overly any of that. But you know, it's I like good role play with a good story, good character interaction, and a challenging scenario or two. So that's cool. XL lurk away, man. There wasn't a bloodshed earlier that day. Yes, Alex, there was. Altair, good to see you, man. Oh, thank you.
Hey.
Hey, what's up, Les?
Back.
Cool.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, good. Thank you to have you on. Wonderful to you on short notice. Yeah.
Oh, always a privilege.
Oh, cool. So we're gonna have a raid coming in too here. Still a couple minutes early, which is all good. Gamescape is going to announce so many crits. Yeah, you know what it was though? It wasn't a lot of critical hits. It was critical. They rolled 19s, and the audience had given so many points to them to use that every time they rolled a 19, it was a critical.
Yeah, I rolled 3 19s yesterday and convert them to 3 crits. So, yeah.
Thank you so very much for a great raid. Hang in there, everyone. We got some great giveaways and a cool discussion tonight. So sit tight. I'll pop up the giveaways as soon as I come on here. Get through two of our sponsors. And if you haven't followed Kayla Townlord's wife, please do. I'm really hopeful that she continues with her that Sunday game, which seemed to be extremely successful, and she continue to move on with that and build it up. So great to see everyone. Hey, cool, Guild Superior, what's up, man? So give me a second here. I'll come on early. So Gamescape is going to have a mega painting contest for the last 2 years of their terrain pieces. With the number one, the main prize will be the Gold Dragon of Chaos from Ralpartha. Open box, but not touched or utilized, and it goes for a minimum of $250 on eBay now. And that'll be the grand prize, but he's got like 6 prize packages. And Bill and Master Crafter and Mike Disney will be the judges. I'm going to skip the other screen. We'll go right to this one. So, yeah, you know what, Alex, that's me, man. It's like I got stuff all over the place. Come on a few minutes early. Just BS a little bit. Hello, Goats. Good to see you, man. Been a while. Get into some campaign discussion for Greyhawk and some ideas and some that maybe you can take. Don't have to even apply to Greyhawk. Long shot, good to see you too. Get my alerts up here. There we go. What's up, Gallagher? Good to see you. Doing well tonight. Months. That's insane, dude. 40th month, man. I guess that just shows you how long I've been at this grinding. 5 minutes early tonight. Good evening. Hey, Kayla, thank you so very much for that raid. Let me hit this up here and put that in there. So, good evening. Welcome. J.K. Lurkazumba. Tonight, I got 2 really cool guests for this discussion. Of course, we got my partner in crime, Anna Meyer.
Hello.
And I have, if you do not know Les Reno or Oblivion Seeker from the Canon Fire sites and DMing at Virtual GreyhawkCon, and also DM'd a what was that, a Halloween special you did on the Discord server there?
Yep, a Halloween special is the inauguration of the Adventure Drome over on Canon Fire's Discord.
Awesome, and welcome, and thank you for hopping. And Jason is having some technical issues, so we're not sure if we'll see Jason tonight or not. But if Jason comes on, it's a bonus. So thank you all for coming here. I'm going to get this going. So as far as giveaways because we had a huge raid come in here, let me set that up. So I got some cool things for everyone. Everyone, especially if you're new to Greyhawk, we got a bunch of classic D&D reprints. Going to go out. I'm going to give away two for each giveaway. So you get your choice here. Part A would be if you want the city sites, the country sites, or the Den of Thieves, which these are all great reference books. And then part 2 will be you get your choice of 3 classic modules: Queen of the Deepwed Pits. Oh, look at that! Ghost Tower of Inverness or Tomb of the Lizard King. There you go. And I'll do 2 of those. So yeah, that'll get everyone in there, get excited about some things. So we're talking about campaign planning again tonight, which is a cool topic. Armin, you'll get a gift certificate from New Zealand, but that's fine, man. Sign up, please. So yes, it always makes much more sense for me to send that that way. So. We've done a bunch of these, Anna and
Yeah.
Les, and this one is not a discussion on what is or is not canon. It's not that.
Yeah.
Right. So, Les, what are your thoughts about what we're going to discuss tonight? Like, what do you want to get out and give the crowd in this discussion and the viewers?
I want to give the crowd that it's a good time to be getting into Greyhawk if you're new to it. It's a great time to be returning to Greyhawk if you're returning to it. And, we tend to think, oh, yeah, Greyhawk, maybe some of us maybe think, Greyhawk, that's that thing we played back in the 80s. The point is that there are still stories to be told. And there are still threads that spin off of the threads that we were exploring back in the 80s. And there are all kinds of cool ideas that we can weave from those threads into our own campaign and make them our own and make our own threads out along the way. And grow our own Greyhawk, really, that way.
That's it. That's it. And you don't have to be doing it for 40 years like me or 20, 30 years like 30 years like Anna and Les, right? Or however many years it's been. I don't know, Les.
Yeah, I don't know you, but it's been a lot of years. Yeah.
79, 80, something like that.
It's years as long as I have been. So
yeah,
you're all the way back to the beginning, and you don't need to do that. And there's some really great stories that you can tell. And what we want to do is show that. And I've noticed something, and I've noticed it on some of the boards, particularly certain Facebook groups, and I've noticed it sometimes in Discords. Newer people to them are kind of afraid to say what they want to do with their campaign or their game because they're afraid that they're going to mess up something. Right? Does that make sense? Am I saying that right, Anna? Yeah.
Yeah, it is a large, because a lot of DMs rightfully and smartly do that. You run modules, meaning you run the old classic modules and stuff, and then if you want to take a step and go beyond the modules and start exploring Greyhawk by yourself, so to speak, with your players, that is a huge step. And it is something that, because then all of a sudden requires you to grab the bull by the horns and start coming up what's out there and what's happened there, and go into uncharted territory, or maybe just fill in the gaps between modules and both time-wise and geography-wise. You might want to flesh out the players going from one part of the Flan East to another to go to play another classic, or you want to brave it and say that, no, I want to create a story arc for myself, for my players. And that can be very, very rewarding.
Yeah, and the one thing that you really don't want to, we don't want creativity squashed, because you know what that leads to?
Exactly.
Nothing.
Yep.
And that's when everything dies, and that's not what we want. And the community's growing, and we want more and more streamers, we want more bloggers, we want more participation, and that doesn't mean that if you're a streamer that's all you need to do. Throw a Greyhawk stream in there, here and there. You don't have, if you got your own homebrew world, that's fantastic. But let me tell you something, there's a community that you can that will embrace you with your content, and it doesn't have to be. And this is the other thing I'm trying to discuss, and then we'll go into some details. It doesn't have to be a rehash of history adventure, right? And that's not what we're looking for. Les, what do you think?
I totally agree. A matter of fact, if I were to jump into it, I would say what I did with my Halloween one-shot, the backstory for that, which is now public knowledge, and I'm actually writing up and elaborating on a little more of it for an article. But it all stemmed from one passage in From the Ashes.
Okay,
and that's all.
Do you know where and what page? Because I have this.
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you which page. I can tell you where it is. It's in the gnarly section of.
Look what I already have up. I'm ready for you, but I got the wrong one. I got the Fusion Grub box set. Give me a second here.
Sure, when it's discussing the places in the gnarly, it mentions Bad Deep.
Oh.
And it mentions that there were 2 Iridian tribes who tried launching a war of conquest in this part of the Central Flanaess.
Right.
And eventually they attacked each other, and what happened, the result of this battle, was the creation of a place called Bad Deep, where supposedly fiends walk the place at night. The spirits and bodies of the dead soldiers come back periodically. It's just a blighted place. The druids have to perform rituals on each of the festival weeks to try and keep it contained, but it's slowly growing like a cancer inside the gnarly. And what I did was I took that, and there's a very brief piece that Crichton Broadhurst did for Mysterious Places during the Living Greyhawk stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's available online, and he elaborated a little more on this. And he gave you the name of the king in question, I believe, Karashast. And he explained that Karashast had been assassinated, and then his sons were the tribesmen who fought.
Okay.
And just based on that,
this one.
Crichton makes this great comment about how there's this great bit about how no one's sure if it was something about what the magic that the Iridians were practicing, or the land itself, where Bad Deep is, or the region's of proximity to these magical spaces and standing stones and stuff. But something was unleashed that day. And what I did in my one shot is that it turns out that Karashast had sent one of his young and most ambitious lieutenants south prior to Karashast's assassination on a kind of mission with some troops to determine what could be conquered, and what remained to be conquered, how much land is there, how many people whose blood we can make flow or turn into slaves. And this guy encounters, as you know from the Ashes and City of Greyhawk box set and some other sources, the gnarly rangers have had their liaisons with Swan May and with dryads and stuff like that. Well, in this case, I was like, what if it wasn't a particularly nice creature? What if it was a spirit of the forest whose impulses...
Whoops, you went blank there, Les.
Yeah, I think we lost him for a second here. Yeah.
Uh-oh. He said spirit of the forest whose impulses... Zap!
Yes, and then, yep. Well, you can't talk about bad spirits. They attack you instantly, so they get you. Yep.
Oh, man.
And basically, she calls down a curse upon him. Okay, he is slaughtered by the elves and Flan and is fleeing north, and comes upon her, and she just basically, with the last bit of fluid in her body, the last bit of water that hasn't flowed away in her tears of rage, with that last bit, she spits and curses his name, and he's swallowed by the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that there was now a cult of Dark Druid, or a Dark Druid who had started a cult worshiping him as this Avenger figure, who would be able to be the instrument of the chosen people of the forest against the Iridian cities and against all the people who had basically been co-opting the old ways, and were now, you have Greyhawk and Divers with some Iridian heritage. Just the idea that they're clear cutting the forests. This dead Iridian is going to be our instrument of vengeance against them.
Very, very cool. So
that'll be one way. I took something and I added something.
Yep.
And I added a new villain to the lore, I hope, or at least my own lore. And there's some of his henchmen still loose. Some of his lieutenants are still riding about the gnarly on their horses, haunting the place.
And here it is, page 47 of the second book, the campaign book. And so, and it's only 3 paragraphs, right? That's it.
Yep.
That's it. And so Les has taken this and made a full story about it and ran a Halloween adventure, which is really cool. It has some crossover with some other things that are out there, kind of like we all know Rob Kuntz has Dark Druids, so that's another thing you can utilize that's pretty neat, and that's pretty dark and disturbing too. If you read it, oh my gosh, that's
oh yeah, now you see why I love that adventure.
Oh yeah, it is. It is very. I've been delving into it there. It absolutely is. Hey David, good to see you, man.
And so, what's neat, I was going to throw out what's neat too is that some of the second edition products like Slavers, if you use Slavers,
oh yeah, that's
or any of those books, it'll mention periodically if there's a section about the region, the Central Flanks, there will inevitably be some section where it mentions Bad Deep in passing. So if you were to be running one of those adventures, you know, if I ever run one of those adventures, I can plug this thing into that as a side quest or as a sequel.
Absolutely, and the great thing about Slavers is, and this should be all right. So, and we're going to get to this too, because this is one of my 3 favorite references of all time. Is what a plethora of information in this one that you can go for and pick, and it's a lot of these little blurbs. So this Sergeant era was really good for stuff like this because he had some unbelievable writers besides Carl Sargent. He has Sean Reynolds, Chris Pramis, oh my gosh, Bruce Cordell, all of them, in this area. So thanks Mike for doing that. So let me hop back here. And you got me there, Les. That was a good one, a good start to hear where you came up with your story for that, and that was on the Discord. Really, it was a neat thing, and just a little thing, a little blurb. And the good thing about it is you can decide what you like and what you don't, and I do that all the time behind the scenes. Exactly,
I worked in. There's something that I threw in just to give you an idea. These were in the both Sargent's version and Broadhurst's version. These were just Iridians, right?
Yes.
Who had made it. What I had Karashas, when he arrived and was going through the Cairn Hills, he discovered. Now you may remember those minifigs from the 1980s.
Yeah.
Those Greyhawk miniatures. They had cavemen from the Cairn Hills.
Yeah,
so what I did was I had in my backstory these Flan had driven these other Flan who were of darker beliefs and impulses. They were basically evil Flan. They had driven them into the hills where these guys had conquered and intermixed with some of the cavemen. And Karashas meets them and is basically like, "Wait, you have kinsmen to the south. Join me in their slaughter." And so they go south, which is why this whole thing winds up being, it was just a bunch of evil Iridians. We aren't going to talk about the evil Flan involved. And how much of it, including the stuff about the nature spirit, had been covered up through successive generations of telling the story.
So what
there were various people who didn't want everybody, they didn't want to admit that there were Flan kinsmen involved in the. You
changed it up. You changed it up a hair. Yeah. You changed it up a hair, which is really.
But cool. That's just a version of the truth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of what is published and what isn't. There's a lot of conjecture, and so let me flip back to the beginning here, and we'll talk about this. So, and a lot of people ask, where do I start, right? And that's a tough one, but where you start is where you want your Greyhawk to begin at, and we always talk about do you want 576 is that beginning era? You can even go before that, and we're talking that's the Hamlet, Temple of Elemental Evil, beginning time frame where you can get your beginning at, and then the next jump is the Greyhawk Wars, right? Which is what 590. I always get them confused when it is
580s.
580s.
585, I think it is, right? And it goes to 591.
Yep.
And then after that, you have the Living Greyhawk era, which is 3rd edition. through, and then finally after that you have the end, which is post. But you don't even need to worry about that when you're starting. You can. I do what's called floating time, and it's kind of like a TV show. You really don't know what time frame it is where they're in. You know what I mean? And then you can put it in afterwards.
Yeah, and
So
you can always pick a date like 576, start your campaign, and then just take ideas from other publications and run your own version of what's going to happen, so to speak.
Absolutely.
What happens in your campaign. The war might happen, they might not happen, they might happen in a different way.
yeah,
And with different outcomes, and if you can run the startup to the wars and then run the wars and let the characters and parties participate in the story and change things.
Yeah.
And then you have a new world outcome that you can play on, so to speak, or play off in future campaigns.
absolutely. So
Les, I think it was, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, Les,
No,
I think it was a beautiful example of taking something that was in published sources and add some of it, and then take some other component. Just like you, I like to take an idea. You take some little significant thing, then you take some legends, myths, and then you weave that together, and you create campaign arc or like a starting point from that. I think that's the way to go. I do the same thing, and that's to play with it, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's the so it's kind of, I build my own truths for campaign on top of the existing truths, and then tweak one little thing now and then. Is like in my campaign now, I tweak the purpose of Ayus. I haven't tweaked what he's doing. I haven't tweaked any of that. I just added kind of explanative or kind of the purpose behind Ayus and so on. And with Igwilv and Grasts and all that, I've added in purpose and stuff to their actions that is not in any of the sources, but it doesn't contradict the sources. It could be one of the explanations, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I think that's a great thing, and I think another thing that dungeon masters should keep in mind is that you have the well-known public faces of evil in Greyhawk, right?
Yeah.
And even then you have the ones who you may not necessarily see, but you're aware of their presence.
Mm-hmm.
You have your Acerarax and everything else. But to me, here's the neat thing is there is absolutely no cosmic rule. Nobody's going to come up and spank you unless you really want to. If you go ahead and you create your own villains. And maybe that villain is a former henchman who's gotten ambitious.
Exactly.
Or maybe they wound up getting their hands on, it's like, the story, you get these stories of these corrupt officials who run sidelines and then wind up growing their own kind of criminal enterprises. Maybe it's a henchman who got his hands on a magical item or artifact and has been secretly amassing power. And now to his boss, he's like, hey, screw you. I'm the new big bad.
Yeah, and you also have to add low-level and mid-level henchmen, so to speak, to local ones. So depending on how you start it, meaning it's a low-level campaign, then you might not even need to have all the big power background plot already in place, so to speak.
You might have the villains develop alongside the players.
Exactly.
As the players are like becoming powerful influences and influencing the world, so too these new villains.
Yep.
And just as the heroes draw attention, so do the villains.
Mm-hmm. And it's a great point. It's that you need your own villains because you don't want to have, Rary's my villain, right? Well, Rary's a 26 level mage, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or Ayus is my villain. It's cool for like the long end game plot, maybe.
Yeah.
But
yeah. You need disposable villains too, meaning you need villains that the characters can kill off
exactly
during the campaign.
Yep. Exactly. And I have my version of villains in my game. It goes back before there was even a City of Greyhawk box set, and here's a pic of them. A recent pic, and that's my Dark Brotherhood. So
nice.
Pop them up. So this came about from a blurb in a dungeon magazine, and this is before really the Greyhawk deities are out and around, and Gary Gygax was huge on Finnish and Norse deities, and what I loved about this was they worship the two gods. They worship Hysi, the Finnish god of evil,
Oh, there
and
it is.
Leviatar, the Maiden of Pain, one of my favorites of all time. Right,
Nice.
I love that deity. So the Dark Brotherhood has existed, and Tim, who's on, will tell you what a thorn in the side. And I usually go a decade to a decade and a half with a different leader. And it goes back all the way to the beginning, into the early 80s, I think 82, 83, and there's other, lower level people fighting, but there's always a main nemesis, and eventually they may be successful, and it's gone to this day still. And they're active in the Gnarly, they're active in the Welkwood, they're active in the Sus, they're active in the Pomage, and kind of behind the scenes. And it's just ironic that they're called the Dark Brotherhood. They have nothing to do with the Scarlet Brotherhood thing.
Yeah.
But they're fun. They're fun. And I was so excited in the 90s when I realized that Forgotten Realms uses a lot of Finnish deities as published source.
Oh yeah.
So Ilmater, Leviatar, Myliki, right? They're all. So I didn't feel that bad. Keeping certain Finnish deities in my Greyhawk.
Well, you woven them into your campaign, so now they're part of the lore. So
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting. If you do it well, your player's going to love it, and it becomes a part of. And then you can spin off, meaning you get a second generation villains and a third generation, and they can come back to it again. So and you will get kind of old arch villains that you kind of created for your own campaign, and you can kind of bring them in and bring them back in again, in and out, and that's kind of the cool thing. Villains can kind of disappear in the background and then come back again and haunt you for different and haunt the players and the characters later on. So it's kind of
one of the things you can do along those lines. And when I say campaign, I'm gonna let me just clarify. There's the ongoing campaign, which includes what's happening now. When I mentioned the campaign that ended in June or July, I'm referring to the last set of characters who went through this, right? But their actions and their characters are felt, and those PCs and NPCs are still around in game. They're just not player characters right now.
Yeah.
They're retired. But what I did was all my one shots. And no matter when they're set, if they're set in the 570s and I'm running first edition, or they're set in the 598, 600 period and I'm running fifth, they all share this common history, right? And slowly, bit by bit, we were talking earlier, Jay, about how I'd been absent from the internet for part of this weekend. I was actually redrafting my timeline.
Oh, cool.
And my notes to reflect what had been going on in one-shots, like at GaryCon and with the Halloween thing, and some stuff that had happened in campaign that the players had found out about.
After the fact.
Just to make sure that it was updated. Yeah, after the fact, because if something happens in one of the one-shots, like a temple gets burned down, the players in the 590s might come across the ruins and remains of that temple, but it's now occupied by somebody else.
Yep.
Right.
And that's one of the things where, like, what's neat about this is I've managed to draw up this conspiracy of bad guys that goes back to the 570s, touches upon and has people who they came in contact with from the Scarlet Brotherhood all the way to the Horn Society. And it's this history secret history of Greyhawk that spans 20 years or 20 or 30 years while everyone was preoccupied with Lolth and with the Slavers and with the Greyhawk Wars. There was this whole other thing going on. And while all that was going on, there's this whole other thing that's been going on. And now everything that they had been putting in place is, the time is ready.
And so it creates. That's great. I mean, and that's a good thing to note that the main story plot line is going behind the scenes, but there's your own what's going on in yours.
Yeah, because if you remember, there were all these implied connections in Gygax's, a lot of Gygax's modules about the Elder Elemental Evil, right?
Yep.
You got these little touches in the Giant series. You get of course, you have Hamlet. The thing is that you have all these things that connect, but the player characters who are going through them, unless you run them as a series, wouldn't necessarily know that they're connected.
Right. Right.
But you can hint at it, and sometimes if you're really like an obsessive with me and you just love developing bad guys who are going to get slaughtered, and basically with his dying breath, he thinks you think you've stopped it. You haven't. That basically you can just go ahead and put these things together so that the player characters are left. Wait, we won, right? And then the next time they're playing a different PC and they come upon a certain color or a certain inscription or something, and they're like, "Oh crap, not this again! I thought we finished this."
Yeah, and also I like the thinking of that, and like in my Shieldlands campaign now, I put seeds in for 4 major story arcs.
Yeah,
and there's only one of them started so far. The other ones are lurking in the background, and I don't know which ones, because the characters might accidentally or on purpose start or get into one of the other story arcs, or I'm also rolling dice for each of the major factions and to see their activities, so see which faction is ahead. So I roll a d20 and the players roll a d20 factions, and sometimes I told them, now you roll for IUs and to see who's having the highest score, and those and one other player might roll for the Shieldlanders and so on and so forth. And then I say, now we have one secret faction that I introduce. I don't tell which faction it is, and they get to roll for it too. And then as it's like last session, for instance, they were now going to the Dragonhide caves that are kind of almost behind enemy lines, and I use land, and they rolled an 18 for IUs, meaning IUs were like, oh, something is going on, I'm going to send what I got and put the hammer down on it, so to speak. If they rolled a 2, IUs might have been no one told me, and he didn't bother to look, so to speak. But now he got, all of a sudden they got not IUs personalized on it, but they got someone up there, maybe all the way up to Doraka, to say something is going on up there at the front. We need to keep an eye on it. Yeah, so send it out, whatever he had disposable at Gensal, to take a look at it, so to speak, and crush whatever's going on. And that meant that the characters now met several thousand of IU's scum coming their way. And that was not something I didn't know. It was up to the dice at the beginning of the session. So I had ramp it up from basically nothing to the whole shebang, so to speak. And I like to do that. So even me as a DM don't know exactly what's going to happen. And I just have the different building blocks, so to speak. It's like a chessboard. I have the pieces are spread out, and I know what the pieces are, but what's happening in each piece move is up to what the players do, some random dice, and a little bit of my input. And then I kind of make the mix, and I just let it happen, so to speak.
Yeah, let it play out.
The scary thing is that the players, if they're overly ambitious, can run into a hell of a lot of trouble. Me and the players have to kind of sort them out. So it's kind of but I like that type. But other DMs might want to have it much more like they know they want the story arc to be there, so they can effectively railroad the players through. And especially if you run streaming games or tournament games or at conventions and stuff, then you need to be much more set things in more set pieces, and so you can move the story forward and not get whole sessions, meaning I can spend 3-4 sessions, nothing really happens. And all of a sudden the whole world comes down. And if you run it at a convention or a stream, you need to use the time more effectively. So that my style of gaming is not the best. But if you have a set of sorry, go on.
No, not at all. I was going to say that's why also it's advantageous to look at people who give a lot of serious thought to. They look to people who've run the game for a long time or played the game for a long time. Look to bloggers who do a lot of serious thinking about the game. Jason Alexander over at the Alexandrian comes to mind, where he'll do stuff like he'll recommend, the 3 clue idea, which is that anytime you want your players to follow up on something, make sure that they have access to 3 clues that are going to point them that way, because otherwise they'll follow up a red herring. They'll follow up some
Yeah.
random thing.
Mention something interesting out there, they will run like crazy for it.
So it's like you want to keep basically not
Yeah.
only is this an interesting thing you've heard, you keep hearing about it, or you keep
Yeah.
finding clues that are pointing you in this direction.
Yeah. And the other thing is, oh, sorry, go on.
Go ahead, keep going.
Oh no.
I was going to say one of the things is that you make sure if you have a long-term campaign, what I do, I keep it boring for my players, a session or two, meaning nothing really happens, there's downtime and it gets boring, because then if I want them to do something, I just point whatever little light out there and boom, they go like crazy after it, because it's boring. We need something to happen.
Yeah.
So you can't just dial down and make it dull and nothing really happens and so on and so forth.
And then the whammo.
Yeah, exactly. Then you can come with a whammo afterwards. So the players will put themselves in that situation. So put the characters in trouble.
Two other recommendations I would make to DMs is we think campaign, we think the kind of thing that we're discussing where it's ongoing and has an overarching plot. But by the same token, don't be afraid to return to those modules or to that kind of model where you're just playing. It's going to be, your character's adventure is going to take them through levels 1 through 4, and they're going to be investigating the secret of the secret of the whatever, the secret of the sorceress lizard, or whatever. Don't be afraid to, in other words, do something where it's just an adventure that's relatively concise. There's room to meander through it, but there is an endpoint as well. And then your adventurers can go ahead and go to the city and blow their ill-gotten gain, and it's on to the next adventure. Like, don't be afraid to go episodic rather than serial.
Yep.
That would be one recommendation. And the other would be, think about your home base or your environment and what that could lead to. There's a neat thing that Chris McDowell, who's a guy who created 2 games, Into the Odd and Electric Bastion Land, came up with. And it's basically just for designing characters or whatnot. You don't have to use it all the time, but it's a neat little rule. It's called the triple roll, or the triple rule, excuse me. And it goes something like this. Say that you have a building. Think about what the building was originally supposed to be. Think about what the building is now. And then think about something tangential to that. Like, is there a secondary purpose that the building's being put to? Is there someone pursuing his own hobby? Like, in other words, is the guy who's running the...
We lost you again, Les.
Yeah, we lost you.
We lost you.
Yeah, but I got a good point from Anghammarand saying that sandboxes are great, but that takes a lot of work from the DM. Yes, it takes a lot of work, and the way I tried. Sorry,
you're back, Les. Yeah, you completely zonked out for about 15 seconds.
Okay, I was saying just basically the idea would be that you got the 3 layers though, right? The what it is, what it was, and was something else that may be going on in it. So the idea is there that you have not only the building itself, but the building might have some secrets about it that its current occupants don't know.
Absolutely.
And you can take that, and if you think about older modules, if you wanted to run something in the setting of one of the older modules, take that older module and say that it's 20 or 30 years later. What's changed in the meantime? Who's moved in?
What's up, Dale?
What are they doing with the place? And it can be a really cool moment for players, I find, when they're in a place and they suddenly realize, holy shit, I played a different character in this place 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
I just didn't recognize it.
Right, and you don't call it. Here's the trick. You don't go, I'm playing Balchan's Beacon. I did this to my guys, I don't know, before I was streaming. But you change the name of the adventure, and then you do the things and you place it somewhere else, or you may have them go back there and like, oh my, and they're, my guys, they don't remember anything. So, you know what I mean? And that's a great thing you can do too, definitely.
And you can even justify it in universe. I mean, like, think about if you're a villager and, this neighboring tower has been reclaimed and there's a new lord who's rolled in, who's taken control of this place. You don't want to be associated with all the bad stuff that was happening before.
Yeah.
So you're gonna rename it, and you're gonna consecrate a temple above what was an unholy site, or and raise the unholy site, and so it with you're going to try and remake the place just as we see throughout history. I mean, look at the history of certain cities like Jerusalem or Istanbul, where you
Yep.
can see where different populations asserted their own identities and
It becomes like layers on top of
exactly.
each other. Yep. And that's
Good
the thing.
point.
And I want to go back to Amaran and his questions on or
Go ahead.
very good statement on sandboxing, saying that it is a lot of work, but if depending on your play style, but if you really like and your players like sandboxy play styles, it can pay off, but you have to limit your games in certain other ways to make it feasible. First of all, you have to kind of rein in your geographical area. You have to slowly move out the range slowly, meaning keep them. It's like my campaigns so far, we played 20 sessions and we've been 5 miles away from home, so to speak. So we've been within a 5-mile area. They have never been more than 5 miles. They've 5 miles away from where we started. And the first 10 sessions, we were just in one little village, 1 square mile. That was it. And the rest, that is one way. And then go back again, meaning go back to go on a story arc, and then so try and keep your players, and also players limited geographically. And sometimes I simply say, when they say, oh, now we want to go to big city, we want to get all the stuff there, we want to replenish, we want to spend our gold and get fun stuff and whatever it is, and we want to go to big city that we know is 50 miles away. I will simply say, okay, now I need a 2 weeks break so I can plan the trip, and then I get another 2 weeks break before so I need to flesh out that city, because it's only a footnote on my map and stuff. I haven't detailed it. So sometimes I simply say, now we need to shut down the campaign for a couple of weeks so I can catch up. And so that is, and then some people say, no, then we don't go there, and then we go somewhere else. But that's not the purpose, because I want to give them a fully fleshed out area each time they go there. So, but the sacrifice is that you need to rein in the geographical, the travel time. And what I do, the way I do it, is that they're not magically just there, so to speak. And I just don't describe it across a country, a journey 100 miles across the landscape to go to big city. That might be a 5-session detour in my campaign, 5 or 6 sessions to get there, because it's my travel in my game style is very, very tricky often, depending on what it is. If you go across Ernst, it will just be a list of inns and yummy meals and and which bard performed here and there and so on and so forth, who you met. But in the borderlands of Ayus, that is tricky. Then it's everything from ruffians and Ayusian priests and humanoids on the move and the run and whatnot. So it's scary and dangerous and so on. So yeah.
We had a specific question a little while back about starting points and how, like, if they want start during the Living Greyhawk era. And my answer to that is, if you don't know, if you have an area you want to start in during that area, come to us and we'll tell you who the triads are, because a lot of that material is not easily and readily available. And that's the issue with the Living Greyhawk area. You just, it's not published where it's, for reprint, and because of all the legal jargon behind it. But if you had Geoff, we could get you to Eric Mengi and Jose Ortiz. We could get you to the right, or Casey, if it was Bandit Kingdoms, we could get you to the right people that could help you out. Yep, go ahead.
And also keep in mind, Living Greyhawk, I think, I'm speaking here about the actual Living Greyhawk campaign and not the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. But the Living Greyhawk campaign, and when you go through some of the mods for that, some of the modules for that, you're going to find, depending on the region and depending on the tastes of the people running the region, and sometimes depending on what their deadlines were like.
Yeah.
Right. And what, that it may not, some of the material might not be to your taste.
Yeah, the quality was everything from like 1 to 10, meaning some of the best things for Greyhawk is published in that era, and some of the worst.
Plus, they killed everyone.
Exactly, and we need an adventure this weekend, and we have like 4 hours to write it, and so some of that content is basically terrible, and some of it is fantastic. It spans the whole gamut of quality, play styles, and it's also for an organized
Exactly.
campaign, which means that it has technical limitations too, in some ways.
Exactly. So what I would recommend is, if you're interested in a particular region, do some digging around, and by no means, even the people whose stuff I don't enjoy, I'm not going to knock, because they were having to crank out this material
Yeah.
For conventions and trying to appease like tons of players.
Yeah, and
which
they
is
had
no easy
limitations.
task.
A lot of things, some things were
Yeah.
off limits. They were not allowed to
Exactly.
use it.
You can't
and
use
stuff.
Greyhawk
Yeah.
City, except
Mhm.
unless you're, it's a core adventure and you're
Yeah.
in that circle. But the thing for me is just go through it, and you might find it. Now it's kind of, I'm going to use this comparison, but I'm sure that there has to be something somewhere in one of the Rose Estes novels that's actually salvageable.
Oh yeah,
And
I'm
if there's
sure.
something
Yeah.
usable in a Rose Estes novel, I can guarantee you that even if you don't like the Living Greyhawk material for the region that you're using, you might find one or two ideas that are pretty cool.
Hmm.
You can then go ahead, like I said, take it and run with it, man. Do your own take on.
Yeah, and what you can do is that you can take the original box set from '83, pick a place that seemed reasonably interesting, or read the whole thing, and that way you read all the different regions and realms and countries, what the general character is, and then you can, if you want to add more detail, you get the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer and you read that country. So then if you want to set it in Valuna, you read about the history of Valuna and stuff, and then you can, if you like the idea and that general feel, then you take a white spot on the map or a green spot on the Darlene map, or one area on my map that doesn't have a village or whatever, something, and then you invent a settlement that you think ties into the surrounding area, so to speak, and then you figure out who runs that place, for what purpose, who lives there, and then pick something small. I usually start with a village. It's manageable, couple of hundred people, and a few little businesses, and then I tie into a history, meaning how long has this village been here, who had ruled it, what ruins are in the neighborhood, etc. And I kind of write that down on a it's a couple of maybe like 500 words or something like that. I have the basic history and the basic idea of the settlement. I make a sketchy map, and that's my starting spot, and then I work from there, so to speak.
I do something quite similar, actually. I was going to say, like, two of the locations that I've developed the most for the Wild Coast. One of them, well, they're both trading posts.
Yeah.
But they're fortified trading posts. And the idea is, you have these territories before the Greyhawk Wars, before Greyhawk moved in. You had these various self-proclaimed lords and self-proclaimed city-state aristocrats, and you had bandits. But you also have farmers and you have settlers.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, who is running this place? Is it a freeman, like a settler or a farmer who doesn't owe allegiance to a lord? They're not a serf, but they produce their own goods and they maybe trade their own goods. And this
Les zonked again. So we'll get him on.
It's a curse we have.
Yeah, it's the Jason curse.
Yeah.
So before as he's popping them back, let me fill the time. If you go on this map and you go on the Darlene map, those hex. Oh, we lost you for another. Les, we lost you for about 15 seconds again. It's happening.
Okay.
Yeah. So just so you know, your 15 seconds of darkness there, whatever you said in that point. So.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you were saying? Did we lose Les again?
We might have lost.
See if this is working.
Okay.
Oh,
keep
now
on
it's
going.
working.
Yep. So note that.
I was saying that you could basically just who's in charge of this operation, or what groups of people are in charge of it? What are the connections to the local rulers or bandits or whatever? What favors do these people do that they may not want the player characters knowing about? Things like that. And then, the cool thing about that is it can be maybe 50 people with regulars who pass through on business.
Yep.
And that's how you grow a campaign, by never throwing away an NPC.
Exactly. Save it, because they might come back again, and then you
Absolutely.
have a fully. Then you reusing places is good, both because it saves time and development effort, and it's also fun and nostalgic for players to come back to places again after a few years. And that way you save mapping resources and stuff, and it's fun. And
Absolutely.
when you develop NPCs, make it a quick note of who they are and their purpose and their motivations, so you know what they want to do, so to speak, especially rulers and important people. What are their
So, Corey,
ambitions and what do they want to do? Because that's what drives the history. And to me, it's also meaning the story will go forward even if the players are just sitting at the inn drinking. The world will go on, and if someone might come and invade and things burn down and monsters roam and whatever it is, make sure that the story goes on. And because then the players will get the sense that, oh, we're sitting on the sideline, we might get overrun here, so to speak, if we don't.
Yeah, or you can have interesting, unforeseen consequences.
Yep.
Like maybe the locals want you to take care of this group of bandits because they're doing business with another set of bandits.
Mm-hmm.
And the heroes defeat this group of bandits or goblins or whatever. And then a year, 2 years, 6 months, however long down the line, it turns out you've created a really nasty situation because now the other set of bandits has taken over.
Yep.
so many little subplots you can do. And here's
Yeah.
my point: the Darlene map, the hexes are 30 miles, right? 10 leagues,
Yep.
30 miles.
Mm-hmm.
This map, let's just go with free Andy. I'm just going to randomly pick a place.
Yep.
Look at all this open space. You're not going to
Yep.
hurt anyone by I mean,
I mean, there are thousands of square miles,
That's
even
thousands.
in Furyundi. It's like 500,000
Yeah.
square miles
Yeah.
in Furyundi, and it's not detailed. Meaning you can build your own barony with the whole history and
Yes,
rulers and
you're not
God
going to
knows
upset
what.
anyone. Even the great
Yep.
lore, legendary. I'm going to give you an example. I wish I had it here, but Patrick, Canadian Ancient Gamer, just did a town right here, right
Mhm.
here.
Yep.
And gave it to Anna and me and talked about it in Canon Fire Discord, which I'm going to link
Yep.
this right now. And if someone else wants to link Greyhawk Online Discord, please. But if you want to, great participation for Greyhawk in both those Discords. So
Absolutely.
it was Blue.
Blue Bay.
I was going to say Blue Ball. And then I was
It's
gonna
on
say,
it's
oh, no.
Blue Bay. It's on my list. It will be on the next
Yes.
version of the map. It will
So
be there.
Patrick just added something right to that spot
Yep.
there, and
Mhm.
we're like, this is great. We need a stopover point, and this is just an example of how you can add in
Mhm.
things to the campaign. Good, there you go, Lando. I'll say a welcome in a minute
Yeah,
here as I
welcome.
bounce around
Yep.
between. That's very, very cool. So give me, because I know Bill's on now, and I know Tim's on. If you can both indulge me, give me 10 minutes here, and I'm going to show you, everyone, how you can get something, take something that's like a blurb, turn it into your own large story, and even make it acceptable fanon. Okay, I'm not gonna call it canon, but I'm gonna call it fanon. Sound good? Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh.
We know where you're going with this, Jay.
Okay, so I have
Great.
my own. Well, this is from the Ashes. Okay.
Mhm.
So this is the legend of Varnaphane. It's right in From the Ashes. It's 3 freaking paragraphs, and that's it. So it talks about centuries past, the Greyhawk had stumbled upon the overgrown entrance to an ancient dwarven warren, and against their natural instincts, they entered it. In the ruins, they walked, revolted, and disgusted past the remains of long dead dwarves. They found a vast collection of magical axes, no fewer than 5. So you don't know exactly how many they are. Each battle axe +3, but in the hands of a dwarf, it's +5. The Grugak took the axes. Grugak are wild elves, depending on your terminology, if you don't know that. And then the bugbears overtook it, and so there's the legend of Varnaphane. Now fortunately, we have a map from Anna where it is exactly located, and here it is. Okay. So we have here, and notice it's near my Narwhal location that I'm so fond of. Narwhal's in a published source, but here's where Varnaphane is, near the lands of Lord Mistrine, and a lot of other great things. Not far from Bad Deep, too, there, Les, that you were talking
Yep.
about earlier. It's not too far from
Mhm.
there.
Yep.
So we have awesome. Oh, it's in the parcel. Thank you, Patrick. That's fantastic. We have this story of Varnaphane. From here, I took this when From the Ashes came out, weaved something I already had going on about a dwarven battle axe, made it part of this stash, and from there I created the story of finding all these axes of Varnaphane. A couple years later, well, actually about 20 years later, Earth Journal's out. What do? You know what? This is going on in my story. I'm gonna write about it.
Yep.
Okay. So I go and I submit an article from the story of what's going on with these axes of Varnaphane, and it gets published in Earth Journal. And I forget which Earth Journal number it was, but it's in an Earth Journal.
32 or 33 or something.
One of those. And this talks about, this will go into the story. Here we're talking about Schlem and Meal. That's one of my friend's Walt's characters. There's references in here to when which certain axes are recovered, which ones aren't, and what has happened in the campaign from this point. And from that, what do you have? You have, shows you the characteristics of the axes, and then it goes and it starts showing each axe and what its special abilities are, and that runs throughout the entire article. So what have I done? I've taken 2-3 paragraphs from the Ashes. I love the story. I incorporated it. And by the way, the campaign is not just about these axes. There's 1,000 other things going on. But once in a blue moon, the axes themselves become part of the storyline.
Yep.
And that is how, I intertwine it into all the other things that are going on in my campaign. And there's still 2 axes that haven't been found. And this is a way that we can, continue this. At one point, another axe may be rumored to be had somewhere else, whether it's in Blackthorn, right, Les, or one of the Dark Druids have it, from the
absolutely.
You can run 1,000 different things, but from this, then, because I put it in Earth Journal, now it can be shared with everyone else, along with people who stream. Streaming, you can share your stories, but that's the fun of taking a little blurb of legend, lore, published source, and then just making it your own. And hopefully that's a good example for everyone.
It is. It's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I just wanted to throw in, while you're talking about that, about fan creations and fan resources. Be sure to look at some of the bloggers out there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I want to give a shout out to Greyhawk Mike, because during my absence from actually playing D&D, I was still keeping up with the setting, and his blog was one of my main fixes all those years. And I also want to give another shout out to David Leonard.
Oh yes,
yes,
spectacular job of the history and lore.
He has so many tangents and cool breadcrumbs in there to grab for your
exactly.
campaigns.
Any DM who's looking for stuff to incorporate should really just sit down and read a few of those blog posts.
I have my next 5 campaigns in his blog post
David's
ideas that I want to do.
David's on right now, so he's on Snafu.
Awesome.
So let's,
thank you.
Anna, please link your main website in, because we have a question for someone who wants to get your map. All right, so let's talk about last night. If you didn't watch The Great Adventure with Ed Greenwood, Eric Mona, Anna, Stella, Mike Disney, Eric Boyd, and Tony Winslow Brill, David Leonard and Rich Longitalos have worked up from Tommy John Kelly's works and stuff. Great lore on the Low Road, which is going to come out in what's called Post Fest shortly. And so I have been really using what they've developed here, and created a lot of stories with Mike Disney's character Skarn, and once again, and this is a great map here. So once again, in this area here is where the Low Road stories are coming. Note this, and this is another thing. They were kind enough to take something that's not published source, but this Hearthguard Tower, that's in my campaign.
Yep.
So they actually,
But
David.
now I think it's will be so part of history that of a fandom in Greyhawk. So I need to put it on the public version of the map too. So
Awesome.
it will be So I'm going to put my Aldet village and a couple of other places from my campaign will make it to the public map, and my information on these places will be, some of it already out and more will come, so to speak, so people can use it for their own games.
But the blurb on the low road is what, Les? It must a paragraph somewhere? It's
Yeah,
barely
not much.
anything discussed.
Exactly. It's just mentioned as a
right.
name and as a phenomena. That's it.
And they have taken it and they've made it into something really cool,
Mhm.
and it's wonderful, and I just love it. And because
I remember seeing the early drafts of that, and it was so great.
Yep.
It is, and they've really
cool
done their
idea.
homework on linking the locations
Mhm.
in here
Yes.
that it should be, and that is what's so neat about it. And because I adventure right here, right at Valtamira being right here, it only makes sense for me to, and with Mike Disney playing Skarn, his dwarf, I tied in that character into the lore of this low road, and behold, from one paragraph somewhere, and I don't even know what the publication it disappears in. Maybe David Leonard or someone else out there knows. I don't know specifically which one it's in. We've developed this entire new Fanon, off a published source that everyone loves and everyone can utilize, and that's what's cool. So, it's okay, gosh, Jeff, we understand that, man. Real life comes. So I just wanted to share a couple of those stories that when you mentioned David Leonard there, especially that it's a fantastic. Wonderful thing. So, all right. So, Les, why don't you share with us a specific, one of your specific campaign things that you've taken a piece of legend, a piece of lore, a piece of, and what you've done with it. Oh, can I answer one more question? Answered.
Okay.
Timelines. Someone said, does everything occur at the same time between different groups? You can go back in time. You don't have to go linearly, I don't think. You can go, back and forth between adventuring groups and time frame all the time. I don't think it's an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can, since that's an issue with me, I can raise that. The previous campaign, again, it's an ongoing campaign. So the previous group of players, it started in 596 and ran through 598. Along the way, there were some one-shots with different parties who were adventuring in some of the same towns and whatnot where these players were. And if a bar got burned to the ground, then the players in the main campaign would hear about it and come across it. One of the players in the one of the one-shots was the only surviving player and was hauled off in chains. And he wound up being sprung from prison by a patron of the PCs and became part of the main party. So there was overlap that way.
Cool.
And then recently, what we've been doing, a lot of I did some one-shots that were set in the past, in the 576 timeline, and those, how could I put this? I'm very careful. You found an item, okay? Present day, you find an item, but you don't know all the lore on that item, and the item is obscure enough where only a handful, maybe 5 people, would know that it's true history. Now, as you're researching it, these other one-shots are taking place, and these other one-shots involve the history of that item. So the history of the item is being created by other players and parties while the main party is researching it.
Oh, that's cool.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Very cool.
And that can be to the benefit or the detriment of the regular party.
Yeah.
And that's Tim Enoch Pressure said Les's one shots are epic. Very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And note, crossing the crossover between other groups is, and I've stated this on multiple shows, is the way you breathe life and into your entirety of a campaign setting. And I know there's a lot of terminology difference. 5e has kind of, in jargon, has made campaign an adventure path, and it's not, right?
Yeah.
And
it's
that's
more than that.
Yeah. So sometimes the terminology gets lost, and I get the question all the time from the some of the people who are newer to D&D, what level are your characters? You've been playing them for 40 years or whatever, and now it's not one set of group characters; it's the entire setting itself.
Yep.
So, and how
Now,
about you?
Well, right now I'm running two parties at the same time in the same general area. They're about 5-6 miles away from each other now. And the funny thing is that I started with one party and they played 4 days into the campaign, and then I started the other ones. But I actually started them at the same time, so they played now 2.5 days into it. And because I thought they were some miles separated, and the first. I knew that they hadn't left town in the next 4 days, so I knew I had at least that window. And the funny thing is that when the first team that was a party that was in the Oldit, they caused some mayhem and started murdering Wayne, one of the lesser Boneheart mage of Ayus. So some of Ayusians fled, and there was one priest called Merlik. He's a cleric of Ayus, and he fled with a bunch of undead from Oldit village when the disaster struck. And now the second party ran into him and his undead, so they had a fight now with him, and they're only halfway through the fight, and they were beginner players in my campaign, meaning they really played a long time, but they never played in my campaign. So my adventures are a little bit different styles. So they didn't realize that he didn't present himself as a good target. He simply put some skeletons and zombies out in the front and then hid himself and his more advanced stuff in the background, waiting for an opening, and it getting dark, and the enemy is the party is kind of low on hit points or whatever, then he'll strike. So it's interesting to see how it goes. But so there was one party did directly affected the other party, because all of a sudden they got in their area, they got one of the priests or clerics that actually Ayusians that fled, so to speak, and it was simply an outcome of that fight. I had no clue it was going to happen, but it was the logical outcome of that fight. And now the other ones they moved to that area because I decided Merlik and with his undead, he knew where he was going, so it just happened that the other characters went that way, and it crossed in time, and now they saw each other, and now they got into a fight. So it's interesting how one thing feeds off to another. So you can really, and that means that all the prep can be used twice, meaning I got to use the stat blocks, the names, and stuff like that twice. So that means that sandboxing is a lot of upfront work, but a lot of times, in a lot of ways, it pays off down the line. And because you also get a plethora of extra stuff you can use, meaning if you develop like orc patrols, or now various hobgoblins for this adventure and these adventures and this sandbox here in Shieldlands, I can reuse that information and tweak it and stuff for future hobgoblins and humanoids and stuff. So a lot of the skills and the basic material is kind of similar. You get like you can get the local patrons that hang out at the inn. You can kind of reuse a lot of that, meaning a farmer is a farmer, so you can tweak him a little bit. But I have now, the problem is that now I started using PF5, but D&D 5th edition. But when I used Pathfinder 1, I used it for 10 years. I had hundreds of stat blocks in my Evernote and Notion or whatever tool I used. I had hundreds of stat blocks for various mundane NPCs laying around that I developed for a few previous sandbox. So I can kind of easily spin up a city guard party, some posse doing something, or a bunch of whatever needed, like local thugs or whatever it was. I had these kind of resources ready, so develop them and keep them, so to speak, and then tweak the names a little bit, make a different composition, switch out a few weapons, and you're good.
Yeah, I estimate around roughly, with that stat block and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm 2,000 PCs / NPCs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had probably about 500 I developed for during like 10 years of gameplay in
500 every 10 years. That's about right, Anna.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was
yeah.
Good,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go for it.
Something just occurred to me when I was looking over my notes. And that was, Anna, you know how you talked about dropping 3 or 4 seeds for players?
Mm-hmm.
There is a seed that I dropped that the players never followed up on that's still in play in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And it ties in, among other things, the World Serpent Inn,
Oh.
and specifically, obviously, the Wild Goose in Greyhawk then, and Helcom's Pit in Irongate. And it also ties in Odd Alley in Gygax's version of Greyhawk.
Cool.
Which, of course, opens up multiple versions of Earth,
Yeah.
so on. Basically, what I did was I took Gabor Lux, the blogger and critic, and he did a really great publication called The Nocturnal Table, or The Nocturnal Tables, which is a whole way of it's a whole thing where you can roll all this random stuff for city encounters, right? And one of the city encounters I rolled up was just a bit of graffiti. It's an eye in a pyramid, and someone has written underneath it, "We buy and sell." And I knew that of course, you see an eye in a pyramid, you know where players' minds are going to go.
Money.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the Illuminati and everything else. So they see this once in near a burned out part of Safeton. Then they see it in another town in a burned out part of town. Only the writing this time says, "No returns ever." And it went on, and what it was I developed through this whole thing the idea that there's this. If you can imagine, you remember Mudd from Star Trek?
Yeah, Harry Mudd.
Take Harry Mudd and cross him with a Cenobite from Hellraiser, and you have the idea of this merchant from another plane who goes to these sites of misery and is just basically trying to get the best deal he can on souls so that he can take them down to the lower planes.
Oh.
And but while he's going around and he's dealing with hags and everything else and dealing with people who are in misery, the players just keep missing him. But they keep seeing his calling card, the graffiti advertising his business, if you will.
Yeah.
And of course, he's smart enough where he flees as soon as he can to get away from authorities or witch finders or anything like that. But the idea is that he crossed over, presumably through the World Serpent Inn, and he's just here on business, just traveling salesman.
Yeah.
Making an honest trade in souls, or as honest as it can be, and leaving all these broken lives behind him. And the players just keep missing him. Only once did a player wake up in the back room of an inn where he had done business hours earlier. And that scene will haunt the player till the character's dying day, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was just a way of introducing something. There's even more going on in the world than you're aware of.
Yep. Yeah, I have two kind of plot hooks in my campaign that they haven't explored yet, but one they found and ignored, and the other one they haven't found. And one of them is a little dragon-like lizard, looks like some ebony. It's actually dragon bone, and it's a small statuette, and that is made from bone of Dragotha. That's one they found, so to speak. It's a little thing. It's about 5 inches long, and that is a piece of bone of Dragotha that actually Vakunis had that one, so to speak. That was one of the stuff he had found. So they found it on him. That's one of them. The other one they haven't found yet, but they've been looking a bit. Thinking is that looking around, and it's just outside of all that. There is a small mass grave where it's about 30 people buried, and those were men of Halmarda the Cruel. That when he had taken over, and Halmarda the Cruel it's described in I think Living Greyhawk Gazetteer. He was one. He found the iron hand of Vecna, and he ruled part of Shieldlands for like 25 years or something like that. And he became Vecna, basically, so to speak. And there is a small little leather doll buried in that mass grave that is missing one eye and one hand. And everyone, if you look at it just superficially, you notice it's just like a leather doll. It's actually human skin, and it's missing a hand and missing an eye, and that is a thing that ties into Halmarda the Cruel and Vecna. So it's one of these little things that I can build a future campaign.
Yeah.
on. And
Oh yeah,
That's
definitely.
Yeah,
creepy,
in there.
Anna.
yeah, so and that is part. And
I wholeheartedly approve, Anna.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, and then the tree itself, it's the old oak outside, and it's an oak that the Iusian priest didn't like it because it smelled bad, they said, and they tried to burn it down, but it came back again.
Yeah.
And then they were so terrified afterwards, and then they started to chop it down. And when it did, one of the branches reached down and basically strangled one of the Iusian priests on the spot. And that made that no, we're not going to ignore it, so to speak. So they ignored it afterwards, and they kind of stayed away from it. And that is another one of the leads, so to speak. And it has something to do with the old faith, but the Iusians just stayed away from it and was like, no, don't go there. And it's scary because these are low level Iusian priests. They are like first to third, fourth level. So they don't want to, and they don't want to report back to their superiors that we have these things, that we can't deal with it, because then they will get their heads chopped
Yeah,
off.
they would be competent.
Exactly. So they just shut up and say nothing about it, and so on. So that's another plot point. And then what happened in the campaign, that one of the characters, my early player, one of his characters, he wanted to play a warlock, and he was looking for his patron, so to speak, that give him strength. And he found the Dragotha little statue, and Dragotha spoke to him and said that, "Oh, I can give you powers," and so on. And he got terrified and threw it away. And then he ran off to that tree.
He threw it away? He just threw it in the trash.
Yeah, no, yeah, he just threw it away at home, so to speak. He threw it out the window. And what happened was that one of I use skull crows came and investigated, like something is going on and it's interesting. And he was terrified. And then Ayus was trying to recruit him, and he kind of ran off, and then he was yelling and cursing so much, so the tree got basically strangled him, and then he ran off, and that was part of an illusion, because the skull crows created an illusion and he went crazy, and yeah, so it was kind of part of a horror movie when one of the players got and he, what happened was that the player had to abandon my campaign, so I got to use his character as an NPC.
Nice.
So I went rampant with it, so to speak, to make it part of a horror movie, so to speak. So they're not really sure what happened, so to speak, but it's part of the hooks.
So speaking of hooks, for
Yeah.
both of you, Anna, I know from the Eyes the Evil reference, you've used Wakunis, right?
Yes.
Because he's
Mhm.
specifically in
Yeah,
there.
exactly. He's a lesser Boneheart mage from that.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Les, how about you as far as characters that are a published source for interaction use in your campaign?
Okay. This is gonna be interesting. He's not physically been a presence, but his presence has been made known.
Okay.
Do you remember in and now the name is escaping me, so you'll have to prompt me here.
Okay.
But do you remember the character who was Alan Hammock's assassin from Rogues Gallery, who Robert Schwab wrote up again for 3.5?
Oh my gosh.
Lasseter in the Dark, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's Lasseter. Yep.
He plays a kind of major background role in my campaign because I've always loved the character ever since I first saw him in Rogues Gallery.
Yeah.
That illustration of him with his dark cape, and you can just see the one eye under the hood. I'm like, dude, this is badass. And I'm like, oh, he's a badass assassin.
Yep.
I mean, what isn't there for like a young boy to love, right? And as I got older, it's like the drift away. But then I noticed, and I see that this write up of him for Greyhawk for 3.5, and I'm like, I love what they did with him, where he apparently has some sort of respiratory illness that can't be solved through clerical means. There's something just wrong with his lungs. I love the idea that he attempted to assassinate Nerif Gazgul, and Turin Deathstalker saved the mayor, which basically cemented their friendship. And then he was imprisoned in Greyhawk. He was a prisoner in Greyhawk for a while. They didn't want to kill him because they wanted information about his network. He then escapes and actually manages to get away from the Narwhal headhunters.
And I use the Narwhal headhunters a lot.
And I'm
A
like, just the
lot.
idea that and the idea that now he's been dormant for so many years, but whenever there's a major assassination,
He's there.
right, someone
Yeah.
who's supposed to be invulnerable, there's always the question: is it him or one of his agents? Because there's this whole thing in that article where it mentions that you may think you're dealing with him, but you're actually dealing with one of his agents,
Yeah.
and that even his agents don't know some of the time whether they're dealing with their boss or with a proxy.
That's cool.
I love that kind of idea.
Yes, a behind
And-
the scene. Maybe they'll come across him one day. Maybe not.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he's dead by now,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and one of his proxies has assumed his mantle.
I took one other character so far in my Shieldlands campaign that is a published figure, so to speak, and that's Katarina Woolworth,
Oh,
the
nice.
commander of the Shieldlands, and her story is that she's Earl Homer's cousin that took over, and that Belvoir asked after the war to take over and revive the Knights of the Holy Shielding and bring them back and reconquer the Shieldlands. That's basically her short little blurb in published sources. So I was like, okay. And she's a paladin of Heronius, and Heronius in my campaign is an aspect of Bahamut. So I was like, okay, here we have a major agent of Heronius. So okay, let's make her a gold dragon and make her 250, 300 years old. So she came back. She actually was inserted way earlier in the story. So she's been with the Woolworth family since long time ago to get her human persona, so to speak, because it was an investment that Katarina's dragon father wanted for her to have. So she saw an upcoming noble family of paladins of Bahamut paladins that he could place his little hatchling, so to speak, to get her human persona and become a paladin, and then she quickly learned, so to speak. Well, it took a while. She's just a dragon, but for the next 25 years. And then when the war broke out, she took a position in the court of Belvoir and became Belvoir's bodyguard. And then when Earl Homer got taken by Ayus and taken prisoner behind enemy lines, so to speak, and were tortured and so on, then Belvoir sent Katarina and with some others to get Earl home from Ayus, and she succeeded, and that kind of cemented her reign and her fame within the Belvoir and the good community and so on. And then she simply said, well, I need to go back and I owe it to the Shieldlands to bring it back again. So now she organized it. She's an 18th level paladin of Heronius, and she is an old gold dragon in my campaign, and now she's hell-bent on getting Shieldlands reestablished and simply kick some Ayusian butt. And she also that's the official story. And then there's the secret story arc. She's a gold dragon. She knows about Morgenstaller, she knows about Dragotha, and she knows about Ayus dark dragons or abyssal shadow dragons. She wants to kill them, and that's her real mission too. And she's bringing that in, and she has 2 celestial dragons as her partners in this. And her dad, Arkail, is a gold dragon that works with Celine and stuff. So there's major money, there's major power, and that's the kind of the real plot line behind it. But that's something that will come later in my campaign as we grow into it. So dragons play a major part, but that's one overarching side plot, so to speak, that the characters can get into, and they can be, and therefore you have the Dragotha little thing. When they found that, Katarina was like, "Ooh, that's why she actually went to Aldit, because that was found and she was interested in it, and that drew her attention to it, and that was part of the plot, so to speak." So I woven 2-3 plots into each other, and then we'll see which one takes precedence. It's up to the players and what they're interested in, and some of the dice too.
And I think that reminds me actually of Turin. Turin Deathstalker became a main player or major figure in my campaigns.
And he's such
really
a iconic character, you know.
Yep.
And one of the things I liked, yeah, I liked what they did towards the end of the Living Greyhawk, so I had things go in that direction, and the players' responses could alter, obviously, Living Greyhawks. Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm using this material, some of this material from the core adventures, but it doesn't have to play out the way it does in there.
Right. I
Mhm.
agree 100%.
Oh, I think
Well, we lost
him
you
again.
there.
Yep.
All right, low life.
He will be back again.
So,
Yep.
So Les gets back here. Free City Greyhawk box set is a great place if you want to get a lot of NPCs that you can utilize in here.
And that's
oh, go ahead. You were.
And it's charisma based, right?
We lost you for 15 seconds again, Les.
I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with my
It's
signal
okay.
tonight.
It's okay.
You have deception, which is charisma based, right? And in 3.5, the write-up for him in the Living Greyhawk Adventures mentioned, if he's questioning the player characters, he will get the one with the lowest charisma and talk to that person privately first.
Oh.
So that he will basically be able to find out the truth and then go to the others and lean on them when they lie.
And here's Tyrion.
And
here he is. He's right in this book.
And that managed to screw with the players so badly. Where one of the players was basically coerced into ratting out the other players for doing something. Turin leaning into him saying, "Look, I know you're a good man. You wanted to be a paladin once, didn't you? And yet you're harboring these people who are going to do no end of harm. Just give me the names and give me the dates, and everything will be fine."
Yeah.
And with the veiled threat of torture behind it. But Turin realized, with this person, torture isn't going to work, but appealing to his idealism will. And the player broke, and these two characters wound up being sentenced to death. It was great.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there had to be a jailbreak, and then they were wanted men throughout the domain of Greyhawk.
Yep.
But yeah, the thing with Turin that way is that I think that's a great way. He's another great example. He's got a rich history.
Yep.
Former head of the Assassin's Guild of Greyhawk, becomes military governor of Safton. During and after the Greyhawk Wars, has a total hatred of Turishmak and of orcs and half-orcs and humanoids in general. That goes into the irrational, where he goes hunting periodically, according to the Living Greyhawk material. He'll disappear from Safton, and some camps of orcs will turn up seriously slaughtered when he returns home slightly bloodied. And it's just, I think it was a neat way to incorporate that character. And it creates a resonance with the history and with the politics, and some of the stuff the players did as a result of all this had political repercussions far beyond what they originally imagined. So yeah, I mean, it was fun to incorporate Turin, and Turin, characters like him or Lassavere in the Dark are interesting because, on a certain level, they're murderers, certainly. Yes. They're also businessmen.
Yeah. I have another kind of similar, that fills a bit of a similar role in my current campaign, is that I wanted someone who could be both a villain and also be on the same side of the party, kind of a little bit depending on, so to speak. And so I created Udard, and he grew up in Molag, in the back street of Molag, and he had to fight for his life when he was like 10 years old, and he became a really capable fighter, and he can also sneak around and cut off the throat of people, so to speak. So and then the Horn Society recruited him in and trained him, and he became one of their fighters and leaders, and he's now a 16th level fighter, and he has some rogue abilities and stuff on the side too, and he's really capable. And so he fought and were one of the Horn Society's henchmen through the wars. And then when I used kind of screw things up and so on, then he realized that now I'm in my 30s, I probably need to do something else. I will probably not survive. So he kind of both softened and hardened depending on his scene, meaning he lost that kind of youngster's trait of just going into war for its sake, so to speak, and he started to start thinking. So then he got the chance to and he was capable and going up the ranks. So the Horn Society sent him to Greyhawk to kind of oversee their placement of funds and stuff that was away of the realm. So he became a trusted guardian of stuff like that. And that's where he ended up in the city of Greyhawk. And then and that was during the early days of the war, and or like to safeguard their investment outside of the realm, so to speak. And now he's back in the Shieldlands because the barony of Axport has been taken over by House Seren, that is one of the fronts for the Horn Society in my campaign. So then he's back, and he's the Baron's main henchman to get, he's the guy to get things done, so to speak. So if there's problems, he's the one to solve it. And he's smart, wise, brute, and he's completely brutal. He's like lawful, neutral evil, but he neutral evil, and he meaning he doesn't want to use violence unnecessarily, but if there's someone standing in his way and he thinks it's the simple, easy choice is to chop his head off, he will do it in a heartbeat. Doesn't have no morals more than needed, so to speak. But he's also one that is he values trusted friends and henchmen that he can rely on. So he if troops and people that are on his side that he needs, then he's trustworthy to them, but he's completely ruthless with enemies. And so the characters find him, as long as they work for him, they can actually have, if they're under his protection, that it can work a lot of it, because he killed off several IUCN priests. So several of the local IUCNs have started to get real scared of him, because they realize that he's an enemy that knows them well, speak all the languages, and he's completely ruthless. And so he's running things there, and he's also now on the same side as the Shieldlanders. So they're doing business. They are on the same side, but they don't like each other, but they respect each other. And that's so he's one of these bad guy that is not necessarily on the bad side. And I like to have some characters that are ambiguous in their roles.
Gray areas.
Yeah, exactly, because not everything should be
Yeah.
black and white. There should be some gray, especially in a Greyhawk campaign. You need
Absolutely.
gray in there
Mhm.
to something that meaning a character like Udard might be very useful. You might depend on him, and he might depend on you. But if you cross paths and you become one of his problems, then you have an enemy. And so you have to deal with them differently from a full-blown enemy or a pure bad guy. I want to have a bit of the range in the campaign. I think a lot of campaigns, you need some of that too, that is a bit ambiguous, that put depth and character and ambivalence into your campaigns.
And that's a great a thing that not every NPC you have is meant to be killed, or is meant
Exactly.
to have a
Yeah.
side, or meant to have a side.
Yep.
So if Bill's on and Tim's on, I have Lisden, who's a bounty hunter, and this character goes back almost to 1980, and is always the thorn. He can be a thorn in the side of a party if you don't give him his respect, or say something stupid. But he's also a source of information.
Yep.
Completely, created from my right out of my head, and one of those kinds. We all have those. We all have those shady characters that only know his son from Temple. Well, yeah, Bill, because you weren't around then, right? You weren't around, and you only go
He's
back to
only been around for 25 years.
He only goes back to
30 years.
92. Yeah,
See,
Bill,
there you
30.
go.
Bill, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So, but listen to Tim. But most NPCs should be killed. There's a typical Tim discussion. So. Going back to this, how many characters have I used out of published source? I have no idea. I really don't, but I'll know this, that, and you may have seen scrolling through, and let me flip to this. I'll give you an example of what I don't like to do. So it takes all kinds. Now, I love the Fellowship of the Torch, if you know. This is in the Free City Greyhawk box set. There's a lot of these type of characters in these two books. Fantastic amount of information. And this is a great adventuring party that's completely done up and has great backstory that you can interact with in Greyhawk City or where you want to use them. Also, the instance of probably the first scalable magic item ever done in Greyhawk is in here. The Torch of Anazander is in here. So that's another neat item. Yes. Nastasia Ariani Nightstar has it. And it's a scalable item. But if we go to this, the Slavers, and a picture of all of them have been running through. Here's a good trivia question: of the main slavers, how many of them have I killed off in my campaign from this book? 0. Because I don't have them. The party. I have the party maybe note that they're leading or hiring these other characters I've created. They get killed. I don't like killing off big. I'm not going to kill off Marquesa anytime soon, right? I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to kill off, any of the ones that are, Tarshmak or whatever. I'm not doing that. That's just, I'm not on that grand scale. I love having the behind the scenes characters. So in 40 years, I haven't, slaughtered any.
Sometimes I thought Vakunis will be one of the main enemies in my campaign, and they slaughtered him in the second session. I think it was the first time they saw him. They managed with some help and to ambush him, and I thought they would be intimidated, but no, they just went wild and were lucky. They were really lucky with the dice too. So it was luck, determination, and luck. 50%.
Yes, and that's a great point that you killed Wakunis in your game, and that's just the way it happened.
Kind of. He still lives in his spell book in a way, so we'll see what happens.
So Gribbly asks, no, I'm not talking about copies. Marquesa the Black, Marquesa the Red have been killed. Yeah. The copies. Marquesa the Green actually helps them and wanders around, and Marquesa the Green is a blurb of 1 paragraph in this Slaver's book. 1 paragraph on Marquesa the Green, and I use her a lot in my Heartbeat campaign.
And we have to mention Carlos and Castle Entertainment that made a lot of cool Marquesa modules too. So
yes, and so Carlos has taken Marquesa from here and run with it, which is great and fantastic. So I have killed off other copies. No, Marquesa the Gold is still around as well, and the Rain Marquesa. And no, Gitano, I have not. Other people can have killed off the Circle of 8 many times, but I'm not going to do that. So,
I think it's done enough in public sources.
Yeah, it's done enough. It's done. Vecna Lives, the Falcon. Oh my gosh, how many times are you going to do it?
This actually raised another interesting thing, which is we're talking about introducing villains in the place of villains, villains who can be killed as opposed to the classic villains, the big villains. I also like the idea of introducing, when we speak of lore, like festivals or things like that. That comes to mind too. And it ties into what I was saying about Turin, actually. There is now annually not annually, but every one of the solstices, there is a ball in Safton, and they had these prior to Turin's arrival in my campaign. But before Turin disappeared from Safton, the situation with the nobles had gotten to the point where he was eliminating whole families of nobles. Like the nobles would be involved in some smuggling money to try and keep themselves solvent. He would declare that was an act of treason and have them executed, right? And confiscate the gains. Like what happened was my player characters came upon a ball in Safton in Turin's absence, and what it is it was people who were in their 20s, their teens, 20s. There were the younger nobles and the nobles' children who had made themselves up to look like. At first, the players thought these were undead. They were made up to look as if their throats had been crushed through hanging, or that they had been burned at the stake. But in fact, these were the children of aristocrats who had been killed, or the family members of aristocrats who had been killed. And they put on a formal ball where they turn up, beautifully attired in their traditional Sul aristocratic attire, except their bodies are deliberately made to look as if they're dead, to commemorate the family members that they lost to Turin. And I actually borrowed that idea from there are apocryphal accounts of, in the years after the Reign of Terror, these things called balls to victims balls.
Okay.
Where the young and beautiful would basically dress up, and they make their skin pale, and then have the mark across the neck where the guillotine had supposedly fallen.
Wow.
And so I decided to incorporate that with the idea of Safton post Turin's occupation, where these Sul aristocrats the youngsters are basically making themselves look like they were hanged or burned.
Yeah. So is that a published source festival, Les?
No, that's like I said, I invented that for my
that's
campaign.
awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
As the aftermath of Turin's presence
Yeah.
in the
See,
city.
now that should be something that you should write up and put a blurb on the Canon Fire website or whatever, because
Yep.
festivals tend to be a focal point that a lot of players I've noticed in Greyhawk go to, because they're like, oh wow, because it's something that I have a reference point for, and it's not earth-shattering changing of events, right? You know what I mean?
But
and they can,
Yeah.
and I was really, when I was doing the research for the Halloween special, and I came across Wickrus, and I came across that the Geoff had basically where everyone dressed up as spirits and stuff,
Yeah.
like Halloween. I was like, wow, all right, so someone
Yeah.
had done this. So
Yeah, that ties into there's an idea like in my campaign where the prior to the arrival of the Iridians and the Flan, or the Iridians and the Sul, the Flan of the Wild Coast, on those, particularly during the fall equinox and the winter equinox, would wear jewelry, like bone jewelry and other things associated with their dead ancestors. And the idea was that, the thinness between this world and the next, the line would be so thin that the ancestors could actually enter through and commune through.
Oh, yeah,
and I decided that the Sul, basically, when these Sul do this, they incorporate part of that Flan tradition in that they're wearing the jewelry that was hidden, that belonged to their fathers or mothers or uncles or aunts. The jewelry that had been hidden away. So basically, I am now channeling my dead the person from my family who was killed by order of Turin Deathstalker.
see, that is a neat sidebar festival creation that I think others will go. And look, Bill just said, "Wow, that he loves that." So there you
The
go.
players,
Someone else.
The players out. It freaked the players out because they're hanging out, they just left a bar, and suddenly down the street they see these figures approaching, and then as they get close, they realize these figures are all burned, or their necks. There's the rope burn on the neck, and the flesh is discolored, and they're like, "Should we try turning undead? Should we?" And then one of them giggles and says, "Could you get your hand out of there?" And you realize that these are aristocrats who are drinking on their way to a ball.
Yeah.
And it was totally like, and the players got dragged along to the ball as guests. So they were in this old abandoned house that was full of mirrors and everything else. And the gravity had pulled the glass of the mirrors so that it was bending downward, so that its reflections were all distorted. And you have people like laughing and doing things that people do at parties in back rooms. And then you had the formal music and the dancing, and these people, and it looked like a room full of dancing corpses, basically, to the players.
See, that is awesome. That is cool. The macabre is good. And the grim sometimes.
That's one I will play out with. I've done it with the elves before. Their festivals is when they contact the Fae and so on, and it opens to the Feywild, and they can dance all night in moonshine and the glory of Selene, and then it opens up to other realms, and all sorts of interesting activities can go on. And I'm also doing it now for the Flan in Needfest. Will be a celebration in my campaign, and that's what the characters are trying to get to now, to the old Flan Needfest druidic festivities. And there will be things that they will play out Flan history. They will be like theater and magic enhanced theater and stuff, where they play out the old Flan histories and a bunch of, and both old history and recent history. And then there will be some interesting, I'm not going to spill the beans too much, because this is something that the players will play out, but there will be some interesting stuff going on. And since this is in full old faith, meaning you have the old faith and you have the dark old faith, meaning the dark side of the faith, and there will be some cool, nasty ingredients in this that can be both fun, entertaining, and horrifying at the same time. And so it will be, and one of the ingredients that will be is that there are now some dark priests and dark druids and others who are hunting for Iusian clerics and stuff to sacrifice during the festivities and stuff, and so they can play the villains of history and stuff. So it's kind of, and I don't know if they're going to succeed or not, because that will be up to the dice and up to the players too a little bit. So they will get the mission of finding IUCN meet for the festivals, so to
There
speak.
you
And,
go.
Oh.
yeah, and to see if they want to adapt, if they want to take that mission or not. It's up to the players if they want their characters to take that, or you get points, so to speak. So I offer everything, and then see if my players
Yeah.
want to go evil murder hobo, they can if they want to.
You
So,
always
yeah.
are tempting them.
Oh, I want to. That's what I love as a DM, to tempt the players into the dark side, so to speak. And we often have, and this is one of the things that, and now I want to be serious a little bit, is that we often have these players you need to make sure that you don't step over the boundaries.
Exactly.
And one of the things is that I often scare myself in my damn game, so I'm afraid that I'm stepping over my own boundaries. So I need to warn anyone who plays with me that it might get nasty. Yeah, you never know. Yeah, but I try to not play out the gory details too much.
Yeah, leave that stuff off stage.
Exactly. I hint at it so players can use their own fantasy to fill in the gaps, so to speak. That's the important bit. And also to preserve player agency. The players need to feel like they can affect their own destiny and their character's destiny and stuff to a large degree. So that's why I love to tempt the players over to the dark side, not forcing them, not compelling them, tempting them over to the dark side and the evil side. That I think is important. So it's up to the players if they want to do it or not. It's I just tempting them over. Yeah.
A little bit of a temptation.
Yep.
Here and there, and sometimes that's. You have I mean, let's face it, the game is a battle of good versus evil, in my opinion,
Exactly.
mostly for Greyhawk.
Yeah.
So,
and that includes the evil within yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
I want them to start facing that and start kind of using it as therapy or release or whatever they want. So, but speaking of festivals and stuff, I think the calendar year should be play an important role, because I roll up the weather, and I use a weather site. Hang on a second, if I can find it, I'll link to it in a second.
Okay, cool.
So I roll up the weather. You can take weather for different parts of Greyhawk, and then I rolled it up so I know if it's going to be bad weather and stuff. And now we are into midwinter, which means that it's cold and miserable. Now there are blizzards and snowstorm. That means that very few people are out, and there's no major warfare going on and stuff like that, because no one is going to go out there in numbers to get hurt, killed, or lost due to bad weather and stuff. But wait until spring comes and the weather gets better. That's when fighting season can start, so to speak. And
Anna, is that the scroll of weather forecasting?
Yeah, hang on a second. I have it here. Yeah, I have it.
I use that a lot too.
Yeah, it's great. You just put in the latitude and the type of terrain, and it works fairly well. So it's kind of super cool. So let's see if I can find it here somewhere. I used to have.
As Anna's finding that, so I'm going to throw you a curveball here and a tough question. Give us a trick. Give us something that you use as a trick, or something that someone new to Greyhawk, a suggestion or whatever that you would give them. Like, hey, this is what I would do. I would stay away from this, or I'd do this, or I'd run a module or two. I know it's a tough one. It's very general.
Yeah, in general, what I always advise DMs is assume that your players have a level of interest in things as well, and that they're going to want to quote unquote win on a meta level, right? Mm-hmm. By which I mean that they're gonna metagame somewhat, and go ahead and give them all the clues that they want that indicate that it's IUs. Or Therazun, or something like that behind all this. And then pull the fast one where actually it isn't. It's a far more local, but just as realistically dangerous threat. Like, you think you're going up against something cosmic or global, and no, it's actually someone who's local, but he's a very, very real dangerous threat. And it's the fact that everyone's paying attention to the big evils that allow these little evils to crop up. Mm-hmm. And become very viable.
Yeah, and you can also have local little thugs that you don't know who they're working for, and that's one of the major things in campaign in the beginning, is to figure out who are these thugs working for.
Or maybe they think they're working for IUs.
It's a great point. It's Les, that's a home run. You do
Yep.
not have to start your campaign off. I have to defeat the Ayus. I have to thwart the Scarlet Brotherhood. You don't have to do that. There's
Yep.
there's so many different little if you want to organize evil, I mean, you can even have a group of thugs in a city, or you can have a
Yep.
baron, or you can have
Yep.
a knight, an evil fallen paladin running around, or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yep.
There's a whole bunch of other things. I agree 100% on that, man.
Yep.
There's so
And
it's a great point.
and villains can also change
Yeah.
sides. Meaning, in I Use the Evil, they talk about Wayne and Vakunis and several
Vane,
others
yeah,
who are
Vane
so
does,
yeah,
Yeah.
who are so disappointed with Ayus that they're thinking about rebelling against him. And that's something I roll for each week in the campaign, or let my players roll for, to see if they want to stay loyal or if they are going to rebel and go somewhere else.
And then that creates all kinds of tension in that if that person who's willing to rebel killed one of the PCs earlier,
Yeah.
but now is willing to ally with the PCs against the bigger evil.
Yeah, exactly. We don't
Do
know.
you set aside
Yeah.
your personal grudge and say my enemy's enemy is my friend?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or do you say, no, they killed Joe. I'm going to get this guy's blood now.
Yep. So you can, and how you can either decide as a DM that it's going to happen and so on, or you can, like I do, I let the dice decide, and so I
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen, because I want to be surprised too, and get into interesting situations, simply because it just happened, so to speak.
And leave a good chunk of it too to the player's discretion. Like
Exactly.
What
Yeah.
players...
Yep. And what the players are doing. I mean, the players might affect their desire to defect and go somewhere else or not,
Yeah.
so to speak. And if
It's
they
like the guy could be on the cusp of defecting, and then
Yeah.
the players call him a worthless bastard
Yep.
and a monster, and he's just like, well, okay, I guess I'm not defecting.
Yep. Yep.
Yes, yes. There's a lot of yes. Tim says, "Oh, that should be their only goal." Tim makes Tim makes a very, very dreary world always, but
Yeah.
yes, and always are on the side of XP and loot. Dale, exactly. So so I'll bring up one more for me here, and that is, if you get to a point where you're comfortable, you can take awful lore and change it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yeah. Please tell us what you've done
All
with
right,
the
so-
Doom Grinder. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! We all know, and thank you, Haas, for that follow. Really appreciated it. So the Doom Grinder, we all know, is well, maybe you don't. Is a terrible adventure with great lore in the From the Ashes box set. And once again, we've been referring to a lot of these sets that are, the Fugitive Greyhawk, this one, the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer, all fantastic starting points. Any of them. So the Doom Grinder has a great story inside this box set. From there, someone decides to turn it into a propellered underground submarine cigar that cannot turn, run by Darrow, that was going to run right through the middle and destroy Greyhawk City. Okay, I don't know why. You take a great idea where this is supposed to be. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you progress, I'm going to mention what Creighton Broadhurst added to those mysterious places Living Greyhawk thing on the WotC site about that, where he said that there are rumors that the Doom Grinder is this, there are rumors the Doom Grinder is that. There are even tales that it is an ancient weapon meant to destroy everything in it within the Flanaess, and it was driven by to be controlled by a subterranean race. But these are believed to be the rantings of a senile drunkard.
Well, is that what Creighton said in the thing? It was some ranting.
Yeah, he alludes to it being like something that someone who's
I guess
senile.
they had
Someone took it to heart.
Yeah.
So I've decided that I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And I'm going to create whole new lore around this. And I just did a adventure a couple weeks ago, Prophecies. Starting this off, tying it in with Ed Greenwood's new lore that he gave us on the last show.
Yeah.
Nice.
With a newly trapped, the recently trapped deity, and it's starting to come out. And there's a cult following behind that. And these people, they already fought this, the Lord of the Wilds is just one of these followers. They'll have blank stares, because the doom is coming. Because if this individual gets out of this god trap, it spells doom for Greyhawk City. Kind of some neat stuff that Ed gave us, which is really awesome. And I'm tying them both together because it was just, in order to be good, you got to be lucky sometime, and it came to be. Now,
Yep.
I don't do plot lines in 6 months, so this is going to go over a couple years or whatever. We're going to develop it. We're going to have fun with it. But just note, hey, you can change lore as well, and that's the point I'm trying to make here. Is if you see something you're like, I really hate that. Like, I really hate that Rary killed Aluc and Tensor. Well, then you can undo
Yeah.
it in your game, you
Yeah.
know, and that's fine.
I'm
Or
bringing back the Horn Society. That's
yes,
trying
Anna,
to
you've brought back the
redo
Horde
what
Society,
yeah.
absolutely. Or as
Yep.
you know, as Gitano's alluded to multiple times, I'm tired of Circle 8 dying every 6 months, you know, permanently. Or, you know, so there's some things you can do in your Greyhawk campaign, and then you know, hopefully some people you know will take it and like it, and if you know, but as long as you're happy with it and your players are happy with it, that's all that matters.
I think that's the main thing is like when you're starting out in Greyhawk, or really if you're starting out in D&D or any RPG, talk to your players and get a sense of what you want to do to start out. And do you want to do a hex crawl? Do you want to do a sandbox? Do you want to do a straight up dungeon adventure, and then see where you go from there? Then figure out where you want to set it. What kind of a vibe you're going for? Are you going for like a your Indiana Jones type adventure, or are we looking at Conan the Barbarian, or are we looking at I don't know, the Mole People, that old 50s movie? Figure out what kind of vibe you're going for, and where this would work, and then just play with it and see what works for you and your table.
That's exactly it.
Important part.
And you know. I have, and I don't know if they'll back me up on this because sometimes I can be an arrogant SOB, but both Tim and Bill are on. I listen to them. I listen to my players a lot. So I listen to ideas. I listen to storyline ideas. I listen to, you know, some things they may want to do or places they want to go or groups they want to develop. And, you know, that's the way for a healthy campaign to grow is listen to your players.
Definitely. And encourage your players. Like there's one of my players I mentioned. Shout out to Dylan, who'll probably listen to this on a repeat. But his wife basically was like, go and find a table to play with. You keep looking at your books and sighing, just go and find someone. And he found me at the local game store. And one of the things that he's done consistently throughout the 2.5, 3 odd years is he'll invent stuff. Like if his character is going to pray, he'll actually type up the entire prayer that his character is going to recite over and over and send me a copy of it. Or he'll say, okay, so there's can I write up the lore on this magic sword? And I'm like, yeah, you can absolutely write up the background on it. And he'll write up this entire history of this magic sword that he has. And then that allows me to go through that and say, this then connects to this other thing in the campaign. I can tie what you've invented into my invention and tie it into Gygax's, something that Gygax mentioned in a throwaway line. And it becomes the far richer tapestry for the players contributing.
Absolutely. And when they contribute and when you listen to them, they feel worthwhile. And then that makes the game better.
It's their world too.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Bill just said the same thing. Long-term games need tons of input. It keeps your players invested. And that's a key to developing anything, and that's a number one trick I would say that I would recommend is that listen to your players. Now, once again, okay, I have all know I have the no just no because of Tim and Alan mostly.
Yeah.
There it is, the no just no emote. Sometimes it's okay to say no too.
Yeah.
But listen to them what they have to say, and there could be a balance between yeses and nos there. So. Anna, what any game trick you like to use? You know, as we as far as what something that would be a new DM to Greyhawk could utilize.
One of the tricks you should do is you should listen to your players. So when they come up with cool ideas, you should grab them.
Play with them. Yep.
Yeah, because players often come up with, oh, what if we meet this, and so on and so forth. Don't take them right away whole hog, but put these things down. Like when we just, oh, it's liches everywhere and stuff like that. Then start thinking, okay, what could be the roles of liches in your game and stuff, and take your players' fears and inspirations and stuff and start thinking about them. Don't take them whole hog right away, but start thinking about that dimension and weave it in, so to speak. And also I think one of the other things is tempo. Don't try to force feed the players constant action battles and stuff constantly. Look at a good movie where you have there are dull moments, there are boredom, and then it leads up to, and then bam, something comes in, and so
pacing.
Exactly. Pacing needs to, you need a good campaign, I think, requires everything from boredom to overstressed combat that is facing them with cliffhangers that they might die the next round, so to speak. But you can't have these kind of epic combats every session.
No,
That
I guess
needs
it's
to
exhausting.
be,
And
yeah, it
you
needs to
can't.
be fillers and stuff. So a good campaign should have everything from boredom to absolute terror, glory, and the big battles with the end of the world scenario, so to speak. It should have, you should span the whole pacing scenario from the lowest to the highest pacing, and up and down. And sometimes the shift should be slowly, and sometimes you can get the feel that you work towards the inevitable doom. Sometimes it should strike from nowhere, so to speak, and then build, and sometimes you build up to it, and so on. So it's,
or the players have gotten so distracted by
Yep.
daily life. Like, for example, say you have a player character, not that this ever happened in my campaign,
yeah,
who decides he's going to study under an apothecary, and he gets so caught up in the life of the apothecary and this ghost who's associated with the apothecary and the life of the neighborhood that he completely forgets that there's a bounty on his head.
yeah. Mhm.
And then when it hits, it doesn't just hit him, it hits the NPCs that he's developed relationships with.
Yep. And that's a great way to, so that's why I want to tempt the players into various directions and stuff to see if they take the bait, and that way the other story arcs and other plot points and stuff can come into, and catastrophes can be built up on, so to speak. And it's kind of, and also let the players choose the tempo at times, and then
absolutely.
and at times you should, as a DM, you should let the players take the tempo, and if they want to stress up and get into things, let them get straight into things. And other times you as a DM should take the reins and force feed the players at times, and things are coming, enemies are coming, and events happening and so on, and then it should kind of die out. So I think it's important over time to have different, sometimes the players just want to be taken for a cool ride, and sometimes they want to be in the driver's seat and pull the campaign in a certain direction. And I think it's a good campaign should have both the DM be the driving force, and sometimes the player should be the driving force, and you should let it go back and forth. It's hard to do, but I think it's important long term that you have, that's a way of you should both entertain the players, and then the players should come back and give back into the story, so to speak.
There's and also I would say, in terms of taking what your players say, it doesn't have to pay off the way that the players think. We were talking about players becoming paranoid. I remember distinctly, this just sent everyone into hysterics when they figured out what was happening. One of my player characters started acting weird. It was because he was having a rough time away from the table, right? But
Sure.
one of the other PCs noticed this, and the player approached me and said, "Hey, does my character notice anything about that person's behavior?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, you remember we ran into those shapeshifters?" I mean, you mean doppelgangers? Yeah. Could he have been replaced by a doppelganger?
There you have it. Yep.
And I started going, well, you realize that it's possible. And before too long, this character is making tinfoil hats so the doppelganger can read her mind.
Yep.
And he's trying to figure out, how can I draw blood or trigger a physical response, like stab this person without killing them, to see if they change shape into...
Yep.
And it was just driving them nuts for like 2 or 3 weeks. And she's becoming increasingly paranoid and withdrawn, her character. And the other characters are like, wait, what's wrong? And she's like, get away from me. I mean, and yeah, it was fun. It was fun as hell to watch. And when it finally came out what it was, the players were all just laughing with relief and kind of horrified that they hadn't been communicating to the point where it had reached that level of paranoia.
Yeah.
So they learned a valuable lesson about player characters, actually being on the up and up with each other.
Yeah. It's like in my campaign that I've taken, there's a place called Maidenhead, and it's a mountain, a hill that is next to a lake, and then there's like this granite slope down into the lake, and the lake is called Sorrow Lake. And the local legends is that back in the day, women or girls that didn't want to get married to someone they were arranged married, they actually walked up there and threw themselves over the slope down into the lake in order to, and And the interesting is, I took that from a local legend where I grew up. That was a place.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah, I've
that
heard
was
that.
a
Sweden?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, that was a local legend, and it's actually a place where people go to. It's like 20 miles away from 15, 20 miles away from where I grew up.
Oh,
And we had a
wow.
summer house a few miles away from there, and we walked there. And if you go there, what you do is that you go there and you put like a little twig, so as a kind of to sacrifice and say that you've been there, an offering to it, and then you go there and you look at that spot. So no, I don't know if it's true. I don't think there might not be any truth to it, but it's an interesting local legend. And so I introduced that in with, and I made fantasy names of the places and stuff and into my campaign. And then we'll see if there is actually some truth to it. Maybe that is a lake full of undeads of some sort. Maybe bog mummies come from somewhere, you never know, meaning there are interesting things that you can tie together, meaning the thing gizzards had to get her bug mummies from somewhere. And so on and so forth, meaning there's a lot of possibilities, and you have lots of little legends, you have some lore, some published lore, and you can kind of ambiguously just create things that might be tied together later in the campaign if that is something you desire, and it's fun. So build these little hooks in that don't necessarily need to be hooks, but they can just be there for flavor, and then you might decide it might be a good mood changing or something fun that you can build something out of it, so to speak. So build these things into your campaign. Cool names, little local legends, myths, whatever. It doesn't need to be anything more than a little name or some history that, oh, there's a spooky place up there on the hill, or that tree is cursed, or something like that. You can just put these things in there, and then you can build on it if need be. If the characters want to go and players want to go and investigate the place, so to speak, then all of a sudden you have to elevate it up to, okay, then you have to make a decision what you want to do with it. But so yeah, spice, it's like seasoning on good food, so to put that stuff into your campaign to add some flavor to it.
So that's one of the reasons the other day I recommended on Canon Fire. There, a few years back, Oxford University Press did this 3-volume history. It's a 3-volume encyclopedia of medieval folklore. But they did a 1-volume trade paperback that you can get on Amazon for like $15, $18.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it covers Arab, Islamic, Baltic, English, Finno-Ugric, French, Hispanic, Hungarian, Irish, Indian, Jewish, Scandinavian, Scottish, Slavic, Welsh folklore. And it's great to just go through that sometimes and just think, okay, and it refers you to this other legend. And you start seeing patterns emerge in the legend. Then you can create your own legend that kind of follows that, but differs.
Yep.
It's like your own kind of twist on this kind of material.
Mm-hmm.
And I love doing stuff like that, just for local flavor.
Yep.
And because it can sometimes open up another path, another opportunity for adventure.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting in the fantasy world. Look at the real world, meaning there are conspiracy theories, old myths, and stuff like that. You make fantasy versions of that, and then decide that some of them are just loose talk. Some of them might have a real thing. Some of them are understated. Some of them are overstated. Some of them are connected. And you don't need to decide all that to begin with. You can let the player's interest and fate dice and your own kind of, oh, that was cool. That turned out to be much better than I thought. And you go run with it. And
their own suspicions. Like if they have an idea and they're like, I wonder if.
Yeah, they might tie two of them together and make something awesome, and you can be, that's a good idea. I'll run with it.
And they'll think you're freaking brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They will think they were brilliant, but they came up with the idea. So plant enough seeds to get the imagination of the players running wild, so to speak. That's part of it. Yep.
Look at this. We're already at 2 hours. Isn't that crazy? And we started a few minutes early too. I mean, wow! It's just it burns through time and all. So
yeah, I hope it's helpful and
definitely. I really hope that this
I think so.
Just
yeah. So so in closing, Les, for this topic, what would you like to say to everyone out there, as far as?
Well, hey guys, thanks for listening to me waffle on again.
It's awesome. Yep.
I'd like to say first off. thanks for the people from Cannon Fire and Greyhawk Online for turning up and listening, and to all the newcomers, welcome and feel free to join those communities and ask questions.
Yep.
And don't be afraid to make Greyhawk your own and your player's world.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Absolutely.
that's the takeaway.
Yep. And then share some of your goodies to others
Exactly.
in the Greyhawk community, so we can be inspired by it, so to speak. That's the other important bit, so to speak. So don't hold on of all the goodies yourself, and because that way we will realize how cool DMs and how cool ideas others have. So yeah.
And feel free.
That helps the world live.
Mhm.
That helps the world continue to live as
Yep.
a place where, there hasn't been any Greyhawk material since fourth edition. Yeah, there has. There's been a lot of really good material. It's on Cannon Fire. It's in Oath Journal. It's on different forums. You just need to look and think about whether this suits your take or not.
And please note that we are always, all of us, we're here to answer questions.
Absolutely.
Whether it's via message on Twitch here, or reaching out to me in one of the formats I'm on, or Cannon Fire, or Anasite or whatever. We're all here, and that's the part of it. The community, like Frosty Dill, that was very kind of you to say that.
Yeah.
You can listen and get some helpful ideas and tips, and that's what I love. About the Gabbin end of our discussions is we really go into the theoretical on your own campaigns and stuff. We're in Legendlord, we're delving into the actual, published source canon of it. But this, we really like to, come up with some really cool ideas to help out everyone and to just discuss. Because without DMs, without your players, then we don't have a campaign, and without that, we don't have a community. You got to have it, because the game relies on us all.
That's the other thing. If I could
Go
just
for
add,
it. Sure, please.
I'd say I'd like to thank Anna and Jay and for the time that they put forth sharing and facilitating things online. You guys are just great.
Thanks.
And to people like David Leonard and Jason Zavoda, who regrettably couldn't make it tonight, and others who have spent a lot of time as well sharing their own creations and their own takes on Greyhawk and their own knowledge of the lore with people. I just want to thank them as well for their, tremendous and monumental efforts in keeping this world that we love alive.
Yep. Yeah. Awesome.
So what we'll do is we'll do a couple quick shout outs, and then we're going to do the giveaways, and then we're going to raid into a cool stream, and then start off another week coming up. So Les, what's going on? You got anything you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, I'm probably going to be doing another one shot for the upcoming New Year's. I'm also working on a few articles for Cannon Fire and Oath Journal. I also have some articles that should be coming up in the Postfest. I have 2 articles in there.
Great.
And I believe, and another couple of articles that should be coming up in the next Oath Journal. And you can definitely find me online and throw bananas and rotten fruit at me. I'm usually online either on Cannon Fire or Greyhawk Online. And yeah, that's it. I've got a lot of, also, of course, the ongoing campaign continues, and we'll be introducing some new players in the new year. And they'll be doing some of them will be doing their first edition games.
Oh, nice.
Coming up. We're doing that time jump back to 576, 578. Some of the players have never done first edition. Some of them, they'll be returning to it for the first time since 1990, including myself. It's been a long time. I've DM'd some one-shots, and I'm getting back in the groove of first edition, which I love dearly and will always be my true love. But it'd be great to introduce some younger people to first edition.
Very
and
cool.
Osric, and see how they like it.
You DM both 1E and 5E, which is neat. So which is cool. So Mall Chucker Maps, brand new to the stream and just followed, said I get to start my first 2E game next weekend. So excited. Very, very cool.
Awesome.
That's
Good luck
awesome.
and happy gaming.
Are you VTTing it with Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 or something, or are you playing it in person? Just curious on that, but that's really cool. So if you can answer that, and Jim, lower. So Roll20. There you go. Very cool.
Awesome.
Excellent. Always a good thing. I'm a 1E, 2E person and been doing it for 40 some years, and it's just, that's where my wheelhouse is. So, well, Les, thanks for coming on, man. Thank you so very much for.
Hey, thanks for
Yeah.
having me. It's always a pleasure.
It's been a
Yeah,
great,
it's so much fun.
great
Yep.
addition to this discussion tonight. I really appreciate your expertise and your ideas to help out everyone. Very cool. Anna, what's going on? I just dropped my pencil.
A whole bunch of stuff. I've been some real life stuff apart from your game last night. That was awesome.
Thank you.
And I also recorded an episode last Friday for a Greycast that is coming out in December. So that might be a good discussion. I'm not going to spill the beans yet. But it will. I think it will be a fun. It was a great discussion too. So that is coming, and then I've already spilled the beans, but I think it's worth seeing again. Hepmona Land is coming. So
Yes.
There will be a big blog post coming in a day or so to my Patreons. With the work in progress cover of the whole Hepmona Land, and there will be a discussion of where I go through some of my design decisions and stuff, because Hepmona Land has just a minuscule amount of detail compared to the rest of the Flanies. It's meaning it's an area that is 50% of the Flanies, with basically only the Scarlet Brotherhood. It's a book of. This is everything that is written about, and 1/3 of this book is about Hepmona Land. That's everything that was written. So we have comparatively very little material. So, and the map is also, from a cartography perspective, the map in the Scarlet Brotherhood has some questionable design characteristics and stuff when it comes to geography. So I'm going to not contradict it, but I'm going to tweak it and add to it. So I'm going to explain why and how and so on and so forth. And then we'll see what the reaction is, because it's still in the design stages there. So I can go back and tweak a few things. So that is coming in a couple of days. And that will be hopefully, my goal is to get it included in the whole shebang this winter. So it's coming with the 2021 version of the Flanies. That will be Hepmona Land, a first version of Hepmona Land 2, covered in the same style, the same scale as the Flanies map. So it's kind of cool. And in some ways, it's better than the Flanies, because now I have 20 years of experience doing this. So it's somewhat better. And the Isle of Dread and stuff is coming with it there. So that is coming. And I'm also expanding on the Southern Shield End area, and that I'm doing for my campaign. So there's more stuff coming, up over 1,000 square miles of stuff. So that would not be, and there will be some more Bogford data detail is coming, and there's some more heraldry and stuff coming. And I will also do another batch of heraldry. I missed it this week because there's been so much real life other stuff than mapping going on all of a sudden, but that is going to be much less the coming week. So there will definitely be way more, so to speak. So those are the major thing going on. So and the main thing is to get all the updates out for Christmas. That's why there's not that much big things being released now, because there will be a huge chunk coming this winter. But there will be screenshots and work in progress things coming, and there will be a mapping live stream next week too.
Which adventures in Hepmona Land? Tomokon's on the other. I
think there's a couple of them. For
Quagmire's Lairs in Hepmona Land. I know that.
Yeah, there's a couple of them, not much, but
the Dwellers in the Forbidden City's not there, right? It's not.
No, I think that's in Emedio, I think, but it's. I think it's a couple of them. I need to go back into modules, but basically, it's mostly 1/3 of this book is Hepmona Land, and we basically have as much as the 83 box set covered the Flanies. That's what we have, not much more. And we have, and I'm going to show, we have the map that looks like this. It's a beautiful map in many ways. So hang on a second, like this. Yeah,
I'm trying to pop up what you have on here, and it's not working
upside down. There we go. Yeah.
Having some issues.
So it's basically this map, and it's kind of a pretty map, but from a geography perspective, it leaves a lot of things to desire, so to speak. So it's kind of So, but it
Whoops.
will be a good complement to that first bit. So
That's what we see of
coming.
Hepmona Land right now.
Yeah. And so
That's
the
it.
other 2/3 is
Yep.
or 3/4 are
Yep.
are coming.
That's
Yep.
it for Hepmona Land.
With the islands around it and all that. So yep.
Yeah, Anna's maps are beautiful, and that's all. They're all for free. The original 576,
I'm going to-
598. Anna will link her site again if you don't have them, and it's all Greyhawk. And so
and there's a Notion website mentioned there, Anna B. Meyer at notion.site. Go there and you can download all the stuff, the heraldry and all the maps and source files and stuff are there.
So we'll have a lot more of that. That's really awesome to hear.
Yeah, and there's more. My latest Worth posts, hot Worth, and the analysis is coming next week too. My patrons have had them now for a month, but they're coming out for everybody as well.
So there's a lot of great things, just like we've always said. Anna's got some great new stuff. There's great, the Post Fest will be coming out, so we're getting some great new content out there, which is all for Greyhawk, and that's a wonderful thing. So it's good to see. It's real good to see. So, yep. All right, long shot. Got to see you. All right. So, well, Anna, that's fantastic. And what? I forgot to shout something out, man. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. How about that, Jay? Let me make sure I have it. Hopefully it's updated. Yeah, okay. There we go. I forgot about the next fantasy mapping show, Anna.
Yes.
How could I do
that? We have that too. Yeah, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I gotta find. I don't even know where to shout out this for it. So yeah, note that Anna has a fantasy mapping show with myself and Alyssa Faden coming up, and it's titled Hexes, and we have a special guest whose name is alluding
Joe
me.
Wetzel of Inkwell Design. They do Worldographer, and they used to have Hexographer. Now I think it's all tied into Worldographer. That is kind of a cool mapping / campaign management tool. Yeah, and we also it was one of the spaces in fantasy cartography, and Hexes has been with us since the early days. And just look at the Darlene map is a good example. So we wanted to bring up Hexes for a while, because it's one of the staples in fantasy cartography, and talking about it and Hexes. And then Joe Wetzel, since he done hex-based tools now for I think 20 years or something, but it will be interesting to hear his take on it, since that's part of his day job, so to speak, is to work with hexes and hex tools.
And that show will be a week from Friday, November 19th, 8 p.m. It should say EST. I have EDT on everything still, Anna. Yeah, EST on that fantasy mapping show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have to. Yeah,
all mine. I had to switch.
Yeah, we have to change to EST. Yeah, we have to change to
now,
EST. So I'll make a new one so we can at least use the right ones for going on. Yep.
Well, Anna, thanks. And here's what I got going on. So, and Anna too. Wednesday night, we go to a Legends and Lore, Gnomes, Halfling, Half-Orcs, and others. So we did a show on Dwarves and Elves, 2 separate shows a way back, and we're like, you know what, we're going to do Dwarves again. I was like, we already did Dwarves. So we're going to go talk about characters in Greyhawk of these. Okay?
Exactly, the ones that we didn't cover. So
yes. So, and get some that aren't. So you got Half-Ogres in there. You got the legendary Phoebus, who's the lizard man. There's a whole bunch of other ones we could discuss. So that'll be a cool one where we discuss those. Easter. It's a good thing to say just Eastern time. That is Monday night. So that's Wednesday night. Jeez, listen to me. So Thursday night we continue Tribulations in the Grave more. That is, we didn't get very far in it on Thursday night, as there was 2 major combats that were large, and it's a double month for Reaper. We're gonna do more Reaper giveaways again, I believe, on the Thursday, because I've had back-to-back Saturday night specials that are draining all of my Stratagem Whiz Dice giveaways. So that is Thursday, and then hey, I know you had a fun time with Ed Greenwood and Eric Mona and the crew last night, and it was a memorable adventure. Awesome. I got another Saturday night special. Whoops, I just erased it. You dumbass. This week coming up, I have a really cool group, and they are not. 4 of the players are not. Have never played old school, so I got another Saturday night special. I got the Mandy. I got Darling Creepshow, Little Bones, Myriad X, Kayla Tomler's wife, who's played in my game before, and Josh Pop Zarathon is going to hop in here
Nice.
as the glutton for punishment of this group, and that is and that is going to be at 6 o'clock. Yeah, it's going to be fun. And the name of the title is The Hunted, and so I'm talking with Mandy and Myriad as we're doing character makeup, and Myriad says to me right at the end, "Wait a minute." Who's the hunted? Is it us or are we hunting? I was like, I don't know. I'm not telling you. So you get the idea. So they don't even know anything about it. But they got some really unique characters. Some really cool mix of classes. Like Mandy's playing a Shadow Mage bounty hunter in my campaign, which is cool. It's a cool mix.
Cool.
It's one of Bill Sesharscorn's favorite mixes. So yeah, so we're going to see some of that, and it'll be 6 characters. We'll see where it goes. One shotter, of course, but it'll always be something fun. Yes. So that is what's up. And then TBD on next week's Gabbin. It's on. We haven't decided what our topic will be for next week. So thank you all for coming on. Poor ladies don't know what they're getting in when they meet Josh. Yeah, but see, here's the thing, Patrick. 2 of them really know him well, and they kind of butt heads, and it's kind of intentional. So I've kind of set this up where it's going to be, a real fun evening of discussion. And I may have to kill Josh's character off right away because his character,
Or they might beat you to it.
His character is is a Sylvan Elf, but he's named after a Caddyshack character. So there you go. So I may have to kill him off. And it's not Mitch Cumstein, everyone. That's but it's close. So, yes.
Thank you, Gaetano. Yep.
Yep. Thank you. All right. So let's last call. If you want to get in exclamation point drawing, Josh will be fun. It's gonna be a fun time adventure. Whatever happens, and it happens, right? It's not gonna. Last night was more of a campaign based mission. This one is going to be a little more nebulous, and that's the way I want to keep it intentionally. So, yeah, something like that, Alex. Yeah, absolutely. He's going to get something. He's going to get something here. All right, so I'm going to close this out. We're going to do 2 of them. You're going to get your choice of 2. Okay, so please, you got to be on to claim this because I'm going to close this out, and we're going to. Whoops, I hit a wrong button there. At least I didn't crash the stream this time. Whoops, almost there. I just closing it out here. Give me 1 second. Streamlabs at least is working, unlike the other night where it just stopped. Which was really annoying there. So here we go, closing this out. Okay, first winner. Yeah, Mac, just in time, man.
Yeah, David, you made it. Made it in just in time. Awesome.
Doc Shoulder, first winner.
Oh,
all right,
cool.
Doc.
Oh, congratulations, Doc.
Doc Shoulder. You got to be on and tell me what you want. You get your choice of one of these 3: city sites, castle sites, or thieves' den. And also Doc, city sites, castle sites, thieves' den, and then either Tomb of the Lizard King, Ghost Tower of Venus, or Queen of the Demon Wed Pits. You tell me which 2 you want. The second winner. So we're doing 2 sets.
Okay.
I can pick for you? Okay, I'll let the other person pick first if you're okay with that. So here comes the second winner. Goats are goat.
Yes.
Congrats, goat.
Cool. Yeah.
Congrats. I saw you on there. So goats, you are in, and please sit tight. We're going to raid into someone who only has like 2 viewers on, and I want to, and they're a supporter of the show, and I want to really help them. So please sit tight. So goats, which 2 would you like? And then we're going to do the raid. All righty. All right. So goats, tell me please, which 2, and then I will give 2 out to Doc Shoulder. All right. I think goats, you're in Discord. You can Discord them to me, goats, which of the 2 you want as well. So, all right. Well, thanks, Patrick, for doing that too. All right.
Awesome. Yeah.
So I'll get with you both, and choices: city sites, castle sites, or Den of Thieves. If you're into Thieves Guild play, I get Den of Thieves myself. That's the one I would take if you like Thieves Guilds. And then Q1, C2, or I2. All good adventures. All right. So you can choose from those. Alrighty. All right. Let's raid. We're gonna raid into Eat to Surf. who's an old schooler and is on. And there you go, Den of Thieves and I too got you. And Doc, if I will send you two, unless you tell me change. Thank you, Caesar. Thank you. It was a great,
Thank you.
great fun tonight. Thank you, Les, for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Hey,
Thank you,
thanks again,
Anna.
man.
We'll see you all Wednesday night for a great stream on gnomes, halflings, half-orcs, and other races of Greyhawk. And so we're gonna do that. I think they're doing Keep on the Borderlands right now on 5e or something like that. So we're gonna raid into them and see you all. See you all in a couple nights. And thank you for a great week. And we're gonna have another great week coming up this upcoming week. Everyone have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Goats, if I need your address, I'll look. I'll Discord you. I'm almost positive I have you in Discord. I have Doc's address. I'm positive. All right, setting up the raid. Man, that would be great if you had 2 to 3 people watching. We raided in with like 80. Wouldn't that be cool?
Wow.
Yeah, let's just see if we can do that.
Yeah, it was 100 yesterday. So
It was 100 raid last night, which was awesome.
yeah.
Below is from mine, exactly. Oh my gosh, 90.
Oh wow.
90, awesome. 94.
That is
This is gonna be cool.
fantastic.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Below is mine. See you all Wednesday. Wow, I wanna see this. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh, man.
That's awesome.
Excellent.